Yo, peace, hotep, and Abari Ghani family. This is your brother Asad Malik, host of the Keys to Black Consciousness podcast and formerly the host of United Black America Radio. The episode you are about to hear is a remastered version of the episode that we did with Captain Tazariac for United Black America Radio. Now look, previously I only released these episodes to our supporters. So you're about to get them for free. A lot of brothers and sisters paid so that you can get this for free. If you appreciate what we're doing and you want to show some support, if you want to help us break ground on the Centers for African Spirituality, which is what we do with the funds that we raise, go to panafricanalliance.com/VIP. Listen to this episode all the way through, because not only am I going to dispel some of the myths surrounding the Hebrew Israelites, and you all know I've talked smack about the Hebrew Israelites in the past, and to dispel those myths, again, I'm bringing on Captain Tazariac, leader of the I.S.U.P.K. You probably saw him on Vice News, probably seen him going head-to-head with people like Brother Polite on YouTube and other members of the Comedic Science community. But I'm bringing him on to dispel some myths. We're also going to talk about Palestine. We're going to talk about the nation that is Israel. And we're going to talk about sex. Synergistic energy exchange. Your head went somewhere else, didn't it? And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I made the gradual, instead of the dramatic changes away from what we call the sad standard American diet to eating a plant-based diet, because the health of a nation is the wealth of a nation. We cannot build a viable nation with a bunch of sicklings. So again, listen all the way through. You're going to get a lot from this episode. Why am I re-uploading a remastered episode, rather? iTunes kicked us off the platform. YouTube demonetizes all of our videos. In fact, I think this video, if it's going to be uploaded to YouTube, there ain't going to be any ads. It's not monetized. We're not making anything off of this, which again is why we need your support, panafricanalliance.com/VIP. And if you're overseas, support us via Patreon. But instead of us risking losing all the content that we've been building over the past 10 years, we're just going to upload it all to our own platform, our own servers, where they will live forever. So you can go to panafricanalliance.com, see all of our content there if you can't find it elsewhere. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this episode. Let me quit running my mouth. Y'all ain't come to hear me talk about what's going on behind the scenes. Y'all came to hear from the masters. So let's get into it, fam. Peace.
Miss Millie always going on over the cup.
You children are so clean. Would you like to work for me? Be my maid?
Hell no.
What did you say?
Hell no.
What did she say?
Hey, can't you pump that crude a little faster?
Gal, what did you say to Miss Millie?
I said hell.
Oh, Miss Sophia. No! Miss Sophia, no!
Live from the belly of the beast with your host Asad Malik comes a radio show like no other, spreading black consciousness and fighting the forces of white supremacy. This is the most revolutionary show on the airwaves. This is United Black America Radio.
What's up, family? Welcome to another episode of the most revolutionary radio show on the airwaves. This is United Black America Radio, and let me greet you all as is tradition here before I roll out the red, black, and green carpet with peace. Let me say God bless all my Christians listening. Hotep to the Kemites out there. Assalamu alaikum to my brothers and sisters in Islam. Salute and honors to the Moors. Shalom to all my Hebrews. God bless all the Christians, and to the rest of the family, let me greet you all with Habari Ghani. Of course, you all know that's Kiswahili. That is the official everyday language of United Black America. Now, we talk a lot about the need for us to have a unified language amongst ourselves. That's one of the building blocks of unity. So if you're new to United Black America, if you're new to what we're doing over here, let me break it down for you. Let me introduce you to how we flow and glow around here, how we do business, how we get down. We usually start off with reader listener emails, and we got two. One's particularly long, so we're going to keep it at 2 today. After that, we're going to take a short media break. I am going to give you all a Do the Knowledge segment today. We're going to build on a particular topic that I think needs to be built on. We're going to talk about Israel. We're not just going to talk about Israel because we have Captain Tazariac from I.S.U.P.K, the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, joining us at United Black America Radio. Now, you all know how I feel about the Hebrews, but this is going to be a dope interview, and I want to introduce those of you all whose walk may lie on that path to someone who's knowledgeable, compassionate, dedicated to his movement, not a fly-by-night Hebrew Israelite, you know what I'm saying? Somebody that dabbled. I want to introduce you all to the real. So if your walk lies on that path, you know who to go to. And like I said, it's a dope interview, but that's not why I'm talking about Israel today. This is a subject that we need to build on. Not just because there's a large number of black men, women, and children in the nation state of Israel, but we're also building on it because it's our duty here. It's part of our mission as an organization to fight white supremacy. And that's not just in the United States, that's abroad. That's everywhere where it manifests itself to the detriment of melanated people of the planet. So I'm going to give you all the Do the Knowledge segment before we bring on Captain Tazariac. So let's go ahead and get into these reader listener emails. And by the way, if you all want the full version of this episode, you already know how to get it. UnitedBlackAmerica.org/VIP. All right. By the way, shouts out to all of our supporters. I mean, right now we only have 30. I think we're halfway towards our first goal, but I definitely appreciate you all. This week I dropped some new content in Patreon for you all. I dropped a full module of our work study course for you. That's ready to go. A couple other podcasts are coming from the Lost Episodes series, and I'm only going to be giving that to you all. So if you want to join our ranks, UnitedBlackAmerica.org/VIP. And before I get into it, a couple of announcements. Speaking of the work study course, we are opening up registration starting on January the 13th. All right, January the 13th is when we open up registration. If you want to get a notification when we open, then I need you to go to UnitedBlackAmerica.org/work-study-group. Just do a search for it. It's in the menu bar, though. And then get signed up on our email list. Otherwise, if it's after January the 13th, just check back on the UBA.org site, and you'll be able to see where you can get registered, all right? Let's get into these reader-listener emails so that we can start touching on Israel, huh? First reader-listener email comes from a queen who writes, and I'm going to keep her anonymous because I said I would. She writes, "Greetings. I just came into consciousness, and I've been researching nonstop ever since. I have a pastoral license, so I'm very disgusted by the deception I found in Christianity. My mother exposed me to consciousness growing up, but I don't think she was completely honest. Although I always had pride in being me, she didn't push or guide my religious background, and she always said she didn't have time to split hairs over the religion topic. Sometimes we attended church as well, but our home was filled with artifacts, statues, and pictures of our heritage. We grew up with incense burning, smudge sticks, and I honestly don't know why she never pressed more consciousness on me, and as I think back, my childhood was confusing in that regard. I'm also struggling with building my identity and ability to provide for myself separate from my husband. I apologize if this seems disrespectful, but he isn't a leader and he lacks leadership and integrity. He's often allowed his friends and relatives to verbally attack me and my mother physically, and only responded after I expressed discord. I've also decided to become an Egyptologist to learn all I can. My goal is to learn all I can, return it to my village because I am a village parent, and draw children to the light through my example. I look forward to hearing back from you as soon as possible and to learn all that I can. Peace and blessings." All right. I hope you all understood what the Queen wrote, and obviously I want to touch on a few points here, and I want those of you all who are listening to find some points from that email that you all can relate to. Because in my responses, I'm not just talking to her, I'm talking to you all as well. And even if you can't find any points that you can relate to in her email, you're gonna come across brothers and sisters in this community who share the same struggles that she's sharing. All right. So number one, I want to touch on the topic of you becoming an Egyptologist. You got to start with proper verbiage. All right. You got to start with proper verbiage. Words are more than words. They carry a spirit with them. They carry essence with them. Egypt is a misnomer. It was given to that land by other people, by aliens. And one of the objectives of what we're doing here is to get you to see your culture through an accurate lens. And you can't do that if you're looking at your culture through the lens of an alien group. So, Kemet is the appropriate name for the land that you seek to study. My second piece of advice is make sure you're learning from the right people. Before you go to the library and you start picking up books written by Champollion and other Frenchmen or Budge and other Englishmen, you need to sit at the feet of Ashra Kwesi. You need to sit at the feet of Baba Phil Valentine. You need to sit at the feet of people who have matriculated through the Asa Hilliard courses of study. All right, the Muata Ashbys of the world. And I'm going to make it a personal point to bring more of these brothers and sisters on, because although there's a stream of knowledge in front of you, the source of that stream is important. Think about this. If you're in nature, would you just bend down and start drinking from a stream without knowing the source? Anything could be upriver. Could be a factory upriver, right? Things that could make you sick, things that could kill you. But once you know the source of a spring or a river or a body of water, then that gives you a little more trust when it comes to being able to drink from that stream and sustain yourself. It's important that you all consume your knowledge. You quench this thirst for knowledge from the right stream. Now, in United Black America, when you're going through our work study course, the 3rd degree course is what we call the deconstructive course. And all the people that we learn from are melanated peoples, right? We don't even start touching alien bodies of knowledge until the 1st degree course, until you've learned how to see that body of knowledge and all other bodies of knowledge through the lens of the true and living and not through the lens of your traditional oppressor. And I hope that makes sense. You write that your mother exposed you to consciousness growing up, but you don't think she was completely honest. And I want to stop right there as well. It could be that she just didn't know. Just like now you don't know. You've probably gone through the same process with your babies. You started filling the house up with artifacts and books and different things from your studies, but you have a pastoral license. So chances are your babies also grew up in a Christian environment because you didn't know until now. All right. But now that you are coming into this knowledge, now that you are preparing to pass through the first gate, the gate that we call the Genesis, passing out of that period of time where everything's exciting and you're ready to go off and become an Egyptologist and you're trying to consume all that you can get your hands on without context. Before you pass through that gate and you get into the middle passage, which is the shakeout. This is the proving ground. This is where most people don't make it. This is where most brothers and sisters decide, you know what, I'm just going to read off in my own corner by myself and not make any substantial changes to my life, right? Or even worse, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to forget that this ever happened. This is a great experience and I got exposed to a little bit of knowledge, but I got to go back to work. I'm going to go back to my life. I'm going to relapse. You Christians call it backsliding. That happens in the middle passage. The beautiful thing is if you survive that period of time, if you have the courage to make all the changes that are required of you, enlightenment and transcendence lies on the other side. This is going to be a test of your being. I appreciate your goal of learning all you can so that you can go back and lead the babies. But when you're going through the middle passage, Queen, you're not going to be thinking about anything but keeping yourself together. Once you've made it through that middle passage, then having the goal of teaching the babies won't even exist for you. You'll already be doing it. For those brothers and sisters who have matriculated through some metaphysical schools and orders and meditation disciplines, you know that the point of meditating isn't meditation. The point of meditating isn't to stop thinking or observe your thinking. The point of meditation is to always be meditating, to get to a point where you don't have to set up your meditation mat and put your timer on and start burning incense and get into position and start the practice because you are meditating in the here and now. For some of you all, that's mind-blowing, and it should be. And I don't want you to contemplate that until you are, first of all, under the tutelage of a master teacher. And second of all, until you've gone through the dirty, rough, aggravating, frustrating periods of pain, self-introspection, self-disciplining, confusion, and being able to deconstruct miseducation that typically happens after you cross from your Genesis into the middle passage. Rough period of time, Queen. Rough period of time. And when it comes to your husband, I think this is a good point for the entire family. Young queens who are listening, and I know I have a lot of young listeners. I think something like 40% of our listeners are all under the age of 25. This emphasizes the importance of selecting your king. Now, I don't know what kind of criteria most of you women use to choose who you decide to have babies with, but you need to sit down and you need to really evaluate that list. Then look at the men that you're bringing into your life. And if they aren't true and living, if they aren't conscious, if they're not willing to support and join you in your journey into consciousness, if they're not walking a similar path as you, maybe they're a little further behind, sometimes they may be a little further ahead, then is that truly somebody that you want to plant a seed in your belly? Because he's 6'3", because he has a nice car, because he's holding a basketball, because he has a certain kind of haircut. I see your captions on Instagram, ladies, get you a man with this haircut. And it seems ridiculous to some of us who are older. But, when you're young, and y'all know what I'm getting at. As older members of the community, I think we have a duty to really start thinking about how we approach relationships. This isn't a topic that I hear discussed often in the conscious community, and it probably should be discussed a lot more. What criteria should be set for the men and women that you bring into your life? These can't just be physical criteria either, ladies and gentlemen. Because when you have sex with someone, the acronym for sex is synergistic energy exchange. You're not just exchanging bodily fluids. You're not just exchanging physical contact. You're exchanging energies. So, Queen, thank you so much for that email, and for the listeners, definitely hope you all got something out of that. Let me know what you all think in the comments about that, all right? Next email comes from a member of the family who writes, Habari Ghani family. Thank you for your welcome email. My fiance and I have been walking this awakening journey for almost a year now, so we're still learning and making life changes. My point exactly. See what I'm saying? I didn't even know I was going to read this email. I just opened it up, and it's like alignment. You feel me? But anyway, we know this isn't just something to do, but a complete change to our lifestyle, our food, our spiritual, our finances, etc. We really enjoy and are educated by your podcast, and wish you to keep up the phenomenal work. Well, thank you. I definitely appreciate it. This is a labor of love. One thing I personally struggle with is working for a Eurocentric organization or a European organization and being Black conscious. Oftentimes I really struggle because this is not where I want to put my energy. My dream/goal is to create an African-centered school and own a brick-and-mortar bookstore. We look forward to supporting, learning, and doing more in our community. Asante. All right. I hope y'all got that, family. And so this is something that a lot of you all are struggling with. And I've been talking about this for years. Provided you with a lot of tools, brought a lot of brothers and sisters on. In the last podcast, I talked about how I got to my exodus, how I made my exodus from having to work from a European organization and being self-employed. Go back and listen to that. If this is something that you're serious about, before you make the leap from the plantation, you're going to need to straddle. Now, what do I mean when I say straddle, family? You're going to have one foot on the plantation and one foot in your own business. These are going to be trying times for you, because some of you all feel like, I already don't have enough energy to maintain a job and maintain a home life. Well, then you're just going to stay on the plantation. You're going to have to muster up more energy and more physical capacity than you've ever mustered in your life in order to be successful at this, in order to make that transition, in order to make that jump. The good news is it gets easier. The bad news is most people don't make it to the point where it gets easier. Okay, so what do I mean by straddling? I mean, between now and you actually opening the doors to an Afrocentric school or a brick and mortar bookstore, and that could be years, family. The bookstore is a little more likely. You're going to have to continue to work that job by day. And let's just use the bookstore as your first lily pad, right? If we're playing Froggy, right, and we're jumping from lily pad to lily pad, and right now you're sitting on the lily pad, that is the European organization, and you're trying to jump to your own thing. And your final destination is that lily pad that's a brick and mortar bookstore. Okay? A lot of different routes we can take to get to this goal. One route is, instead of going straight for an African-centered school or an African-centered bookstore, start a blog, start a book review site, start collecting up emails. The easiest and most efficient way of doing anything in this day and age is online, straight up and down. By the way, if you didn't know, the online world is what disrupted all those African-centered bookstores. Now, of course, first it was Barnes & Noble, but Barnes & Noble came through, displaced all those smaller bookstores, and then ultimately Barnes & Noble was taken out by the internet. So if you don't have an internet strategy for anything that you're doing, I don't care if you're a chef, right? I don't care if you are in real estate. I don't care what you're doing. Whatever it is that you want to do, whatever it is you're currently doing, if you don't have an internet strategy in place, you're setting yourself up for the yoki-do. That is something that you can start now. What I used to tell myself when I was on the plantation, family, is however many hours I give to this beast, I've got to give back to myself. Which means if I'm going to work an 8-hour day, then guess what? I'm working 8 hours for myself. That, family, is the only, yes, that means every day you're working a 16-hour day. That's the only way you're going to get out of the plantation. Now you can take some different strategies. You can put together a business plan and go out there and try and get funding, right? And get your credit together and, maybe do a Kickstarter campaign. That's a strategy that's worked for some people. Takes a different skill set. Takes just as much work as building up, say, a YouTube channel, a blog, doing a podcast. If you need some pointers on how to do the podcasting thing, reach back out to me. But it's going to take some work, and I don't want to underestimate that. A lot of people give you all the impression that this is easy. This is the hardest thing that I've ever done. Been to combat multiple times. Been through some life experiences that you all know about. If you all go back and listen to the very beginning season of this podcast, that would have tried the best of you all. I've been thrown in the worst jail cells. They put me on the floor that they used to call the Thunderdome, the young and aggressive floor. You all know what I'm talking about. This is maybe 8 years ago. Now, even though I walked into the Thunderdome, I walked out of a house of consciousness. That's what I left behind in that jail cell. That was difficult. But building a company is by far the hardest, most physically, mentally, and spiritually demanding thing that you will do. All right, so understand that. You mentioned that you're making some lifestyle changes. You need to be a part of this organization, family. We help you with that. We have a concept called the 5 areas of life, and these are the 5 areas that you make your changes in. When it comes to spiritual changes, really easy start. Meditation. And meditation is not difficult. It's not more than what you think it is. All right. There are a few pointers. There are some guidelines. As you advance through different practices, then it becomes necessary to get into some more detailed nuances. But initially, it involves having a seat, drawing in a deep breath, releasing that deep breath, and staying in the moment. When it comes to food, we're advocates of a plant-based lifestyle. I'm working on the vegan thing, all right? So I'm a pescatarian, and here's how I matriculated from where I was, which was addicted to sugar, right? Drinking copious amounts of alcohol. Never was a smoker, never was a drug user, nothing like that. Sugar was my drug of choice. But how I went from, eating red meat every day, ground beef, all of that poisonous garbage. That sad diet, the standard American diet, which is the cause of obesity, heart disease, diabetes, depression, Alzheimer's, innumerable diseases. So that was me. And once I realized that I could not participate in this community without making dietary changes, then I started moving away from that standard American diet into something more conducive to the true and living. All right. So first I got rid of the red meat. That was a pretty easy change to make. Then I got rid of the white milk. All right. So we've said this in the past. If it's white, it ain't right. Get it out of sight. White milk, white sugar, white flour, white salt. Okay, so you start eliminating those things from your diet. You find replacements initially. So with white milk, you replace that with almond milk, right? With white sugar, you replace that with raw sugar, and then getting into the coconut sugar, which I'm working on. I can't really do the coconut sugar just yet. You know, it has a funny taste. I can do raw sugar though. And even that has to be done sparingly. All right. White salt has never been a problem, but a lot of people are getting into like the sea salt or the smoked salt. We're talking about the white refined iodized salt. White flour, I'm getting into spelt now. So you make these little changes. Okay, and now I'm at the point where I am a vegetarian with a little slice of fish every now and then. So I'm a pesca vegetarian. And then ultimately I'll move from being a pescatarian, which is, you know, technically what I am, into being a vegetarian, then into vegetarianism, into veganism, and then from veganism going into something like the alkaline diet. And then from there, the highest rung is the UBA diet. And so we have a diet that our Healers Guild put together that's a little more stringent than the alkaline diet. But I think a mistake that a lot of us make is we try to jump straight from the standard American diet or wherever you happen to be right into the alkaline diet. And then you beat yourself up when you slip up and you have a bagel, and the bagel has enriched white flour, enriched wheat flour, and then you back to square one. You're like, well, let me just go through the drive-through again because I'm already messed up. You know what I'm talking about. You know who you are. So that's my suggestion. So physical, start making these small changes, and ultimately they'll culminate into bigger changes. Relationship, sounds like you got that squared away with your partner since y'all are both walking the same path, but you need to continue to expand your circle in this community, which is why you should be networking with other brothers and sisters, because the people that you spend the most time with, obviously I'm talking about outside of your spouse, have the most impact on you. All right, so you need to make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people, melanated people. And when it comes to your career and academic element, and that's the fifth element of your life, so we have physical, metaphysical, career and academic, relationships, and resources, which we've already touched on resources. Hey, family, if you're not going to be taking our work-study course, then you're going to be missing out on a resource that helps you fast-track the development of your consciousness. So I'll definitely encourage you to do that. All right, family, let's go ahead and take a short media break, and on the other side, we're going to do we going in on Israel today. All right? Peace.
Intro, they was trying to take away your mental, manipulating you, hide you from your great potential. I'ma show you a world with no boundaries. For those keeping you blind and so cowardly, but fear not the moments at hand when the chosen will stand. Meditate and spin the globe with one hand. The ones that's evil stole the land from the sun's people. Fed my tongue Hebrew through drug needles. My thoughts soar above the eagles. The slugs bleed through the greed grew, and soon we can't hate till it deceived you. Cavalry's coming, you cowards keep running. Send your agents for me. The greater glory never changed my story. We all selfish and more helpless. We all dealt with confusion and lies. That's why we losing. Our minds keep the time moving. The swine's ruling. Them kids had our minds ruined. This dark city. We are doing this together. We won't go astray. We are moving up forever.
But there are other people. Organizations who don't want you to know the truth.
We're strong enough together. Know who you are. Yeah, Armageddon's near. I can see heaven so clear. From the eastern hemisphere to the devil appeared. They conspire in the capture the world. It's our time again. The rain is over, God's here. I don't praise Jehovah. Behold my conscience, I'm the golden compass. They raise billions for phony wars, holy applause. The middle class now, only the poor. We live in trash, thrown in mass graves. Burn like cash inside your ashtray. The final seconds count down till we find the essence. We a step from catastrophe. The door to evolution is locked. I got the master key behind the curtain, what the masses don't see. Too obedient to fallacy, the media sent. You were soon about to see an event like never before. The great awakening, he in step when I call. Then we all become one force and hell is no more. I see. We are doing this together. We won't go astray. We are moving on forever. Yeah, yeah. These days getting better. I know I'm brave. We're strong enough together. I'm on my way.
All right, welcome back, family. And as promised, I want to take a quick second to go in on what's going on in the Middle East, specifically Israel. Now, I didn't start speaking on Israel because obviously it wasn't all that relative to what we're talking about here until an article came across my desk. Israel's kicking out 40,000 African migrants. Okay, so Israel, the nation of Israel, is kicking out 40,000 African migrants. Now, it's behaviors like this that lead to things like slavery in Libya. Because if they are fleeing their country, they're obviously not going to go back to their home country. It makes them refugees. So typically when a nation deports a group of people, they don't deport them back to their home country. In some cases, you don't even know where their home country is. They just drop them off somewhere, like in Rwanda or in Libya. Again, leading to slavery, leading to further disenfranchisement. So that got me digging into Israel a little bit more. And since I was having Tazariac on, I figured I'd touch on Israel. Did a little digging. And you can't come across anything related to Israel without coming across news related to Palestine. And so the question that I ask myself is, how is Palestine related to Israel? Because I like to know what I'm talking about. And I like to know what the context is for things happening. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out what would lead Israel to kick out these 40,000 migrants when, as far as I know, Israel was established by Jews who themselves were migrants, right? Here's what actually happened. And we all know World War II happened and Adolf Hitler threw untold numbers of Jews, 6 million, some say, into concentration camps. And, a lot of Jews lost their life and they said never again. And there were a number of Zionists in positions of power, and they advocated for a Jewish homeland. Now, traditionally, we're talking about going back thousands and thousands of years. The Jews believed that that area and Jerusalem, which, by the way, Trump has said, you know what, that's Israel's capital, even though it was shared by a number of different people, fought over during the Crusades. So what we have are the beginnings of yet another Crusades. Arguably, the Crusades never ended. This piece of land was a land that was traditionally fought over by everybody, Jews, Muslims, Christians, and, practically everybody else, except for the Far Eastern spiritual systems and obviously African spiritual systems, of which Islam is not included. Due to knowledge, family. But as I did more studies on what Israel was doing to Palestine, I saw a lot of parallels to what the United States did to Native Americans. I wrote an article on this. I'll leave a link in the notes. I definitely want you all to check it out. It's on a platform called Medium. And Medium is just another place to publish articles. And the way these things work is when you publish an article on Medium, you scroll down to the bottom, and if you appreciated the article, there's like a clapping icon. You hit that clapping icon, and that promotes the article to the rest of the world. So if y'all are on our Medium page, I need you to hit that icon as many times as possible so that we can get our voice above the noise. Make sure y'all are clapping up our articles. All right, make sure y'all are subscribing over on Medium as well as on our normal email list. But anyway, way back in 1918, after the end of World War I, Europeans did to the Middle East what they did to Africa, all right? They carved it up according to their wishes. Great Britain was given Palestine, okay? The area was called Palestine at the time, and this was made official by the future United Nations. Back then, they were called the League of Nations in 1920. So basically, Britain was in control of Palestine. After World War II, Zionists, all right, people who were pro-Israel, and we're not talking about black men and women, we're not talking about Arabs, we're talking about white men and women, whites, used World War II to divide up Palestine. And in 1948, UN General Assembly Resolution 181 divided up Palestine and gave territory to Israeli Jews, okay? So imagine you're a Palestinian. You've been living on this land for thousands of years. And then, one decade you're told, hey, your land is now under control by the British. All right, and then next decade you look up and they're like, hey, you can't come over here on your own land because we just gave it to Israelis. So a group of people that you don't know gave your land to another group of people that you don't know, and there's nothing you could do about it. The Palestinians were obviously pissed, but by then they didn't know what had hit them. They were underfunded, outgunned, and the rest of the Arab world couldn't stand up for them because they were under European control too. So the results were pretty predictable. Palestine got its ass whooped. So before the occupation, there were about 80,000 Jews. And we're talking about before 1949. By the time of the occupation, their numbers had ballooned to 500,000. So not only do you have this group of people who you don't know telling you that you can't use your land, but they're arriving by the boatload, hundreds of thousands of them by the month. So Palestine went to war. And since the 1960s, they've been going to war ever since. Now, the problem with this whole thing is whenever Israel wins a battle, okay, or whenever Israel suffers some kind of injury at the hands of the Palestinians, they use that as an excuse to take more and more territory. And I definitely want you all to check out this map, because in 1946, you have the nation of Palestine and the whole nation is green. 1947, which is when the UN partition plan went into effect, their land was reduced damn near by half. Between 1940 and 1967, they had about a quarter of their land left. Fast forward to today, bro, they got spots. They got like hoods. So that's where the Israeli-Palestinian conflict came from. All right. And they've been, basically killing up these Palestinians ever since. And again, family, these aren't the original Jews. These are Zionists. These are your white supremacist Jews. Fast forward to today, Israel's kicking out 40,000 African migrants, and this got me to studying the Jewish faith a little bit. Judaism and Christianity are close. In fact, the first 5 books of the Bible, which are called the Chumash, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that, were books that outlined commandments given to the Jews. And a couple of passages jumped out at me, family, like Exodus 22:21, where Moses gives God's law to the people, and he says, "You shall not wrong or oppress a resident alien," i.e. an immigrant, "for you were aliens in the land of Egypt." Then if you flip a couple of pages over, Deuteronomy 6:10-13, the people of Israel are made aware that the land had come to them as a gift from God, and they were to remember that they were once aliens. Deuteronomy 24:14, "You shall not withhold the wages of poor and needy laborers, whether other Israelites or aliens who reside in your land." But let me quote to you all what Benjamin Netanyahu said. Benjamin Netanyahu and Trump, very close allies. When Trump came out and said that he was going to move the United States Israel embassy to Jerusalem, which basically told the world that the United States thinks that Jerusalem should belong to Israel, the entire world came against them. But here's what Benjamin Netanyahu said. This is a white dude, by the way. Okay, so what we're talking about here really is white supremacy. Benjamin Netanyahu said, "The infiltrators," which is what they call immigrants, "have a clear choice. Cooperate with us and leave voluntarily, respectfully, humanely, and legally, or we will have to use other tools at our disposal, which are also according to law." Most of those migrants who he refers to as infiltrators arrived in Israel from Sudan and Eritrea after crossing out of Egypt. How ironic is that? And I've always said you can judge the soul of a nation by how they treat the least amongst them. So I want you all to really start paying attention to what's going on in the rest of the world, family. A lot of y'all got your nose in the corner in your own hood, have no idea what I'm talking about, don't know why this matters to you or to us as a people. But what happens to our people anywhere is a threat to our people everywhere. To steal a line from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Because what is happening to them gives precedent to those who would seek to do the same thing to us. I've used this analogy before. We tend not to care about the fire that's burning all around our homes until it gets to our doorstep. But by then it's too late. Let's take another short media break, family, and on the other side, we're going to roll out the red, black, and green carpet for Captain Tazariac, I.S.U.P.K, Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, branch of the Hebrew Israelites. Definitely don't want to miss this interview, family. We get into it a little bit, but I enjoy doing this interview a lot, and I think y'all are going to enjoy listening to it as well.
Came through the portal gate, transformed from a gas in the water shape, swam through a foreign lake, baptized from the sins that war creates, trying to get across the hate, came to the ultimate life in an altered state. Colleague science can't stop till we all awake. From the most severe pain to the smallest ache, those who got the smallest stake always want the biggest slice, cut it with the sword of fate while I teleport to space. Sailed across the face of the planet, navigate with the moral state. Now we building more estates, Walker made the coffin shake. Listen, this is more than fate, bump this on your coffee break. Universal lyrics rich, lost in the poor relate. I hear that acid rain dripping on the path I came. Meditated, wrote this poem in the astral plane. Above the avatar, wrote this on a tarot card. Been in 5 elements, earth, wind, fire, air, plus my own spirit. Never bent my intelligence, followed every step, never skipped my development. Made my own change, never tricked by the president. Rode across hell, I was stripped of my elegance. Eyes wide shut, blindfold with piano key. Blinded by the full moon, underneath the canopy. Lost in reality, couldn't see the fantasy. Science, the immortal king, drunk from the water spring. Truth is what I'm offering. Life is a paradox, made an earthquake. Can't escape from the aftershock. Grab my locks when I'm on the mic. I'm an astronaut, the beat is a spacecraft. Following a strange path, settle on the beach to relax while the waves crash. Followed by the footsteps, passed by the graveyard. Ghosts of the slaves died working on their day job. Grabbed by a dope fiend outside the train yard. Asked for directions, kept giving me the same nod. Mouth full of rotten teeth, scratched out his eyelids. Couldn't sleep awake, this world has gone hybrid. Surrounded by the humanoids, GMO lab rats. Couldn't see this vision of God, it's too abstract. My body is a crystal, made from the stardust that fell from the heavens. I rose with my arms up, feather in my right hand, heart in my left one. Can't escape from self-judgment. Before death comes, better pay attention to me. Before that comes another blood sacrifice underneath the red sun. So my seed read between the lines of what you read, son. You see, you're the author of the books of the cosmos, of the stagnators they shook. Try and dodge, grow, float with a hooded robe. Beneath every hood is gold, elite rituals. TVs that sneak visuals, victims get body snatched. Men used to be the dog star like Anubis, became copycats. This beyond hip-hop now, it's more cosmic rap. Studying the prophets map brought the world chakras back in alignment. Waiting for the right time, I speak electricity. Travel through the mic line and waited for a flow like mine for 10 lifetimes. Spoke to the oracle, this is what I'm born to do. Find me where the net is all, doing what immortals do. Been through hell's corridor, beyond where the mortals explored. So alkaline, levitated out the corner store. Throwing lightning bolts at the judges in the court of law. Slowly rose up from the throne that I'm sitting on. Body transformed, I approached in a different form. Hopped in the mothership, driven by my father's thoughts. Polished off the scrolls that the priests and the scholars lost. Kundalini rising now, trying to use the proper force. Last stop on a thought train, but ain't hopping off. Open up my third sight, turned into pure light. Bird of flight, cause the words I write cure the serpent's bite. Time to tell the world good night. Stepped over sleepers, inception, a dream within dream that gets deeper. Haunted by a great dragon that blows ether. Faced with the red and blue pill and chose neither. A man with no hands rose up and blows reefer. Touched my CD, heard sounds with no speakers. Became my own student and learned with no teachers. Chef that prepares store food, so gourmet. Wonder how I entered the room with no doorway. Resurrect, come in the world with no foreplay. Walk through the temple with black and gold hallways. 23 scientists walk with 12 angels. Earth is so powerful, so graceful, and this time Christ won't come beneath rainbows. How you gonna act like you don't see the halo? Everybody knows I'm back, but won't say so. My ancestral spirit, the wind, through your chandelier, opera in the background. Sounds like the Phantom said, no inner chemistry, just spit until the fans appear. What I write always comes true, these great chapters. Psychically caught spacecrafts from slave masters, parasites, strange actors, and false rappers. Every time I step in the booth, they call NASA. Made myself totally still. I move fast, thought, past warp speed, blast off without passports. To a world, no cop, judge, or white math course. Filled with black students confused and saw past laws. Playing bad sports with stones inside glass courts. No banks, no army, and no task force. No government, no cash on the horizon. Just a sword and a white dove traveling on a black horse.
All right, welcome back, family. And today, you already know who it is. Captain Tazariac from the I.S.U.P.K is going to be joining us. And look, I got a lot of comments from you all when I let you all know that he was coming on, particularly members from the organization. And here's my thing, family. We don't have to be uniformed in our beliefs to be unified in our intention. And most of us have seen the Hebrews on street corners doing their things, setting up camps all over the world. And that has to be respected. And so it's my honor, and I mean that, to roll out the red, black, and green carpet for the faith militant of the I.S.U.P.K, Captain Tazariac. What's going on, family? Welcome to United Black America Radio. How you feeling?
Hey, I'm all right, man. I definitely appreciate the reach out and the opportunity to be able to speak to the people on your channel, to speak people from your side. At the end of the day, ideologies aside, we're all black people in America having our different struggles against the oppressor, against the so-called white man, who we call the devil, which just means deceiver. He's the number one deceiver in the world. And I think we do have a common enemy. Like, sometimes we got to put aside our ideologies to at least address the enemy, and then we can, sit at a table and discuss our differences and find the common goals to deal with the oppressor. So I've always entertained and dealt with people from various different walks of life. Like, that doesn't affect me what you believe in initially, because I think we should be able to speak. If we can't even at least speak, then we have a bigger issue of self-hatred that we don't even want to address. Like, I don't hate anybody from any walk of life that they have, but if you can't even talk to me because of my belief, but I can talk to you even though you have a different belief than me, we got to really analyze what level of hatred we're having against our own people. My hatred against, I don't have hatred against my people. I may hate some of the things that they, do, like, let's say, a drug dealer or a pimp or a past. Like, it's mainly what they're doing. It's not necessarily the individual per se, as opposed to what they're doing. I would really like them to change, so that we don't have to keep taking advantage of black people, which is what's happening to us since we've been in here. America is just people taking advantage of us. So I think we should really analyze if we can't even talk to each other on some level. And then after we talk, if we say, well, I talked to that brother, he don't even want to do this, or he don't even want to do that, or anything like that, then at least you gave an opportunity. But to even deny an opportunity, I don't think nobody should do that to another black person. I don't care what walk of life they're
See, that is the most intelligent and mature response to the relationships that we build in our community that I think I've ever heard. And that's why I was so excited to have you on the show. And speaking of, just getting ready to do this podcast, I was catching up on some of your old videos, watching you school different brothers, and in some cases sisters from different walks of life who in truth weren't qualified to sit next to you, but you offer to educate them, you approach them with love, you approach them with compassion for their ignorance, and you do entertain them. There was a young Jewish brother who was so-called educated, and I guess you already know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Oh man, like some of the things that he was dropping was making me cringe, and it's like, come on, family. And then at the end of the conversation, he said, well, who am I supposed to learn from? And he said, well, you can come and learn from me. He was like, I'm not trying to learn from you. And you say, you see what I'm talking about? You're more than ready and willing to go and learn from your historical oppressor. But when a brother's sitting here with you in love and out of compassion for your ignorance, you don't want to you don't want to engage in dialogue. And so that really spoke to the issues of our people. I thought that was a dope clip. In fact, it was so dope that I'm going to drop a link to it in the show notes, which I rarely do. But, one of the things that I respect about, that's what I respect about you. But one of the things I truly respect about I.S.U.P.K and the whole movement, number one, there's discipline and order there. There's discipline and order there. I spent a long time in the military, and I've built a very disciplined and organized organization. So I definitely got to salute and respect that. Number two, again, family, I don't care what your spiritual path entails. These brothers and sisters, these kings and queens, have a knowledge of the Bible. It's not even close. Like, their knowledge of the Bible is astounding. There are theologians and seminarians that can't hold a candle to them. And number three, having the courage to speak truth as you see it to power in public. I can remember growing up in Atlanta, coming out of 5 Points train station, and with discipline and faithfully, the Hebrews were there dropping that knowledge. And so I can attribute my evolution into consciousness to your group. And I think all the brothers and sisters listening will agree with that statement. And we are bigger than our differences and our ideology, but I'm ahead of myself already. So why don't I let you introduce yourself personally to the family members?
No problem. Of course, I'm Captain Tazariac of I.S.U.P.K. I.S.U.P.K stands for Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. That's under Commander General Yohana, who's the current leader of this organization that was established back in 1969. A little bit before then, a man by the name of Abba Bivens, who would be the founding founder, so to speak, of our organization. He was actually killed by Muslims prior to the full inception of the school, and the men that were with him, who were Yaquab, Ariel, Mashah, then started forming the school. And then 4 other men came afterwards, Kazak, Shah, Lahab, and Yeshaya, to form the 7 men that would eventually form what we know today as Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Now, since the time of 1969, you've had different, some men leave, some men stay. Commander Jenny Yohana is one that stayed and kept the name, kept the original traditions, the foundations, the knowledge, the learning that we've had, which is why he's established as the leader, not necessarily because he put himself in that position. It's because everybody else left, and so he had no choice but to carry on what his founding members told him to do, which was never to leave, even if they left, which is very important. Like, a lot of times when you see changes in a organizational structure, you think there's something wrong with the organization, when it's never the organization, it's just the people, for whatever reason, decide not to stay. So he decided to stay. And what we essentially push is the restructuring of the Black man and Black woman in America. We've been told we have many different names, so to speak, whether we're Afro-American, African-American, Negro, Black, nigger, any other derogatory name that they would like to put on us, just to keep us from identifying who we truly are. And so for us, who we truly are the biblical Israelites. You might hear the term Black Hebrew Israelites. You might hear the term Hebrew Israelites. Mainly when you hear us say Black Hebrew Israelites, it's just a lot of people like to confuse us when we say Jews or Israel or something like that, confuse with the so-called white man that says that. So that's why you hear us say Black Hebrew Israelites. But there is no such term as a Black Hebrew Israelite. It's just something we use to separate ourselves from the ones that's impersonating us. If I could liken it from an African perspective, at one point they used to try to push that the Egyptians were all white people, so to speak. So you would have to go into the records and then show how, no, they wasn't white people. They were African people who had brown skin, different complexions of brown, so forth. So saying Black Hebrew Israelites is what we used to do to separate ourselves from the imposter. But from a biblical perspective, we would just be the children of Israel who descended from a man named Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. And what we try to teach is a moral compass, a moral guide for Black people. Like, we're taught you can be as promiscuous as you want, both men and women. You can abort your babies. You can abuse women. You can beat on women. You can treat a Black man however you want to treat him. And the only ones that suffer from that is us, And then the ones that reap the benefits from that is your imams, your pastors, your councilmen, your Democrats, your presidents. And meanwhile, the ghettos stay starving, the ghettos stay suffering. So we try to incorporate a moral compass where we don't have to. One of the things I said back in 2016 was that a word that Black people need to have is compassion. That's a word that need to resonate inside of every Black man and Black woman is compassion, because that's something that we're willing to give to every other race of people. Like I did a radio show this past Thursday, and on that show, I said everybody going crazy for that little mentally challenged white boy, and who got so-called bullied.
That's right.
Like the whole earth stopped to where he done got 56,000 or 50. I don't know what the number is now, but he got all this money donated to a GoFundMe app. Meanwhile, a young Black girl, 11 years old, killed herself because she was getting bullied, and there was no outcry from America. There was no care from Black people. You rarely even hear the story outside of a few articles. But that the compassion that we're so willing to give to everybody else, we're not willing to give to us. It's almost like a priority. Like even brothers that come from an African perspective, or saying that we're from Kemet or Nubia or whatever ideology come from Africa. Even if you want to say we're African, if we were to do it on a priority basis, we still would have to only focus on Black people in America right now. Like we can't focus on anywhere else until we address the ghettos of America first.
That's
then
right.
once
You got
we
to
get
get your
ourselves
house together. That's
right.
right.
Exactly. Even if you want to tell us to go to a whole nother continent, which that's a whole nother conversation, let's first deal with Harlem, Brooklyn, Jersey City, where I'm from, Newark, New Jersey, Oklahoma, California. Let's deal with the ghettos in those areas first, and then we can sit at the table and exact some form of power. Like we're not even in a position of power to even dictate what we could do anywhere else until we fix where we're at. So that's the ultimate mission of Israelite School of U.P.K.
On everything, we're on the same frequency. Me and my queen were watching a documentary last night about white folks going to Africa to fix the problems on the continent, and all these NGOs and charities going over there. And she made the offhanded comment that, instead of going over there and trying to quote unquote fix things, they should try and fix things in their own house. And that got me thinking, and that's a thought that kind of stayed with me all the way to this conversation. And then here you are speaking it back into existence and into reality. And you're 100% right. Before we can talk about solving anyone else's problems, before we can talk about contributing to any other ethnic groups' GoFundMe accounts, we should be taking care of our own. So you just brought that a whole chain of events full circle. Oh man,
yeah, most definitely. Yeah,
we can have an hour-long conversation about any aspect that you touched on.
I know, and I think that's like where a lot of the confusion be, because of course most people see us on the corners, and they always say we loud and we're yelling, but you got to think about the environment that we're in. We're on the street. So we want people to hear us. Of course, we have to be loud. We have to project our voice.
That's right.
And something that they see, which sounds strange until you take the time to listen, is you're seeing aggressive Black men who are not on the corners trying to get you high, not raping your daughters, not misusing your daughters, not telling brothers we're going to fight you and kill you and harm you. You see a level of aggression from Black men that's about uplifting Black men, which is also against the norm, because all they would rather have is feminine Black men. Like if a Black man to put that dress on and act, then that's cool. If that Black man to put that suit and tie on and preach God loves everybody and Jesus said forgive and turn the other cheek, then that's cool. But if you see Black men on the corner that's saying enough with what the white man is doing to us, brothers, let's gather ourselves together, O nation not desired, as the scriptures say. That's a threat, not just to white America, but to the entire earth, because we're abused by everybody. The number one commodity, you know how they like to put like gold and silver and platinum and all that. The number one commodity in the earth is Black people. We make America run. Like we make America run in our military. In their military. We make America run in their economy because we give all our money to them. So now we got people on the corner saying, nah, don't give your, like if you got to go work your 9 to 5, we need people in different aspects of corporate, but your loyalty or your devotion should go to your people. I'll use an example. I remember a couple of years ago, the LA Clippers owner, Donald Sterling, he had got in a whole bunch of trouble because he was speaking ill
How
of
soon we
black
forget.
people.
How soon we forget.
Yeah, right. And he was speaking ill of black people. And he cut, and rich black people like Magic Johnson and all of them start coming out speaking against Donald Sterling. And Donald Sterling said something that if anybody paid attention, it really shamed Magic Johnson and all them black people, because what Donald Sterling said was, he said, Magic Johnson, he acts like he cares about black people, but he more wants to play golf with me than he does with black people. He said, in our community, this is the part that made me the most mad. He said, in our community, we take care of the poor. This is Donald Sterling saying that. He said, we give loans to the poor and we don't make them pay it back right away until they can get themselves in a better position. So Donald Sterling is basically saying if Magic Johnson really cared, he would take all the money that he got and really invest and uplift the poor instead of worrying about playing golf with white people and stuff like that. Like,
it's not about what you say, it's about what you do. I mean, you can sit around and talking about how much you love your people and talk about how committed you are to a particular community, talk about all these things, but until you're setting up camp and taking action and putting your money and your effort where your mouth is, it's all talk and nothing is going to change. You know, how many black men and women have encountered events throughout our history, right, that should have been trigger moments, that should have been moments that said, okay, well, you know what? It's time for us to make some changes. It's time for us to not just, you know, speak the same. You know, see, we're about to get off on a tangent. I'm trying to stay disciplined here, but it's
I'm sorry
not.
If I did it. I'm sorry if I did it.
You know, it's not enough for us to keep singing the same song, because we've been singing the same song for a long time. Let's start doing something different. Magic Johnson should have said, okay, look, the top 10 highest paid athletes, along with the top 10 net worth retired athletes, we all need to come together and we need to create our own league, right? And we don't give a damn about the white part of the audience. We don't give a damn about the white players. We'll just go and play in our communities for our people with ourselves. And I'm going to tell you what, the whole reason why these professional leagues evolved is because the Negro leagues were bringing out the crowds. The Negro leagues were bringing out the spectators. And so the white league said, all right, we can't compete with them. We can't draw crowds like that. That's the real talent. So let's create these associations, wrap them up in our associations, gain ownership over them, have them play for us, right? Pay them a little bit more, you know, talk a better game to them, but we'll keep them under our control. So we now control this talent. We're profiting from this talent, and we're getting the results that we want. When if we would just separate and take care of ourselves and do for ourselves, for the dignity of ourselves, we would experience, I argue, exponentially greater results than we could ever do through integration. Sorry about getting off on that point, but I had to.
No, I want to add one more. When you mentioned that Negro League and how powerful, if we would have kept that Negro, if you think about the Negro Leagues, right? And if you think about, let's take, I'm from like the New Jersey, New York area. So let's take the Yankees, right? So if you take the Yankee Stadium, what do you have inside Yankee Stadium? You got people selling beer, you got people selling food, you got people selling memorabilia, you got the stores outside of the Yankee Stadium that are able to flourish because people are coming to see the Yankees play. So if they coming to see the Yankees play, they're going to now go to the different stores that are surrounding the Yankee Stadium. So you go back into the Negro Leagues, you have the Kansas City Monarchs. So as the people are coming to see the Kansas City Monarchs, who else is now benefiting from that? The people selling the popcorn, the hot dogs, the drinks, the memorabilia. All the stores that are around are now able to flourish because the Kansas City Monarchs are there. So now you take away the ownership of the Kansas City Monarchs and now give it to the Kansas City Royals, which is owned by the white man. Who else is now able to profit off of that economic produce? White folk and their businesses. So the Negro League was a prime example of the power that we had. And if we would have just fought the fight, like we would have probably had to suffer a little bit, you know, maybe for a little bit, but if we would have stuck together, the war the battle we might have lost, but we would have ultimately won the war are sticking to our own, which is the most important thing. And that's one of the most important mantras that I.S.U.P.K has, is sticking to our own, building up our own businesses, building up our own schools, building up our own everything, so that we can totally be self-sufficient. Like, and that's why, like, a lot of times you see when we on the corners, we go against them churches and stuff like that. They came out with an article in 2006 that from 1980 to about 2006, like, the church made $320 billion off of the sweat of Black people. But when something happens, you can't blame the church. When Trayvon Martin gets killed, Eric Gardner gets killed, you can't blame you can't put the blame at the church. But before an event happens, they want you to give all the support, the money, and everything to the church. But they don't want to take the responsibility for failing these young children, these young Black men, these young Black women. Somebody has to be held accountable. And we got to start giving that accountability to the church, to the mosque, to all of these different things that allow to make money and profit off of us, which I don't have a problem with nobody making money off of us if there's a benefit that we see. And when I'm saying making money, I'm not talking about other nations. I'm talking about our own. I don't have a problem with Black people making money off of Black people, but there should be some benefit if you call yourself a leader in the community. They should see someone that's really stands for them. And that's how we look at it from our perspective. We look at it as we stand for Black people 100%. And that's why we out there the way that we're out there.
True indeed. I'm going to hold myself back. Back because we're not past question one. So you keep saying our people, and of course we're all here because we're unified in our intention, and our intention is to benefit our people. But let's get a little bit deeper, because there are a couple of claims made by I.S.U.P.K and other organizations in the Hebrew Israelite community that all African Americans are the biological descendants of ancient Hebrews. And I want to get into what that means. And the only way that we can receive our salvation as a people is by obedience to the laws of Moses. But before we get into those topics, set the table for the family. What's the difference between I.S.U.P.K, Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, and other groups out there like Orthodox Jews? I did some research on a group called the Commandment Keepers, the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, the Nation of Yahweh, the Ben Ami movement. What's the difference between you all and these other groups that fall under the Hebrew Israelite umbrella?
Okay, well, when we're speaking about the Israelites and the history, I.S.U.P.K coming in 1969 is not the origin of Black people knowing that they were Israelites. You can go all the way back to the late 1800s. F.S. Cherry, Crowley, even Nat Turner. Nat Turner read that book, and he immediately started getting buck wild on him. Also, there's another one. I might say the name. I'm going to Google it. Denmark Vesey. I might have the name wrong.
That's right.
Okay. Denmark Vesey is another one who was a free man and looked to free and used that Bible as his blueprint. So when we're talking about the actual history of the Israelites, it's not 1969. It would go to like the late 1800s, and how Black people would read them scriptures and realize that they're the people that the Lord is talking about. They are God's chosen people, and they would be reading them high and reading them because, of course, the so-called white man did not want us reading anything that would actually free us at all. So when you go back then, you would see that they would know that they were the Israelites. And of course, from an infant stage, we're learning that we're them people, but we're not attaining the full knowledge. Even if you go from a biblical perspective, when Christ was with the disciples didn't learn everything right away. It was something that they would learn as time would go on. So the Commandment Keepers, Abba Bivens comes from out of the Commandment Keepers. Like our founder, Abba Bivens, he was from North Carolina, and slaves told him how he was an Israelite, which is what made him come to New York and learn a little bit along with the Commandment Keepers. But the reason why he chose to separate is because initially we would learn from like the Jews. You had some people that would learn from a Christian perspective. You had some people that learn from an Orthodox Jewish perspective,
right.
and I'm using the term Jewish on purpose.
Right.
But for us to truly understand the Bible, we would have to separate from the oppressor so that we can learn the way that the Lord wanted us to learn. So from an infant perspective, we start learning bits and pieces and it starts coming together. Now, what separates us is that we teach the truth. Like the scriptures say, you shall know them by their fruits. So it's not necessarily General Yohana, Arya, Tazaryach, General Hyman, etc. like that. It's the work that you see that comes from our organization that sets us apart. So you have other brothers that know that they're Israelites, and they can go out and teach and do whatever it is that they want. We are not about hindering anybody from doing what they want to do. But from us, the reason why we separate ourselves is because I don't know necessarily everything that they're doing. I can only speak for what I'm doing. But
That's right.
The history, but the history of the Israelites predates I.S.U.P.K because we knew we was, like I used with our Bivens, Matthews, you got Rabbi Ford, I named Cherry, I named Nat Turner, I named Denmark Vesey. So there's tons of brothers and sisters that you can see in our sojourn in America that knew that we were Israelites. Now, of course, some of them would tie us to an African perspective, which I can understand because we were in that continent for a certain amount of time. But you can't be, from a biblical perspective, you can't be an African and an Israelite. Now, I don't mean that we can't live in Africa. We're living in America. So technically, but from a citizen standpoint, we would be considered American citizens. So you can be an African citizen. But as far as your nationality, like say if a Chinese person was living in Africa, he could be an African citizen, but he would still be considered Chinese. So that's how we look at our brothers that may still be over in Africa. We look at them no different than us being in America. It's not necessarily our homeland, but you do have a citizen right to it. But from a biblical perspective, you couldn't call yourself an Israelite and call yourself an African because biblically speaking, Africans would come from Hamites. We would come from Shemites. So we're two different sets of people.
Well, break down that fork. Break down that fork. Why is that relevant? Where does the whole Ham, Shem aspect come from?
Okay, no sweat. So when you go to the story of the flood, Noah had three sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. So those three sons became the progenitors of the races that you see today. So the Hamitic races.
What you're saying is every race on the planet came from these three children of Noah.
Right. So these three children of Noah is where we all descend from. So of course, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, their wives and their children, they created what you see as the races that you see today. So Ham had his line of children and children's children, etc. Shem had his line, Japheth had his line. So the Hamitic races, which would be Ethiopians, your Egyptians, your South Africans, your Libyans, those would be that line. The Shemitic would be like more the Arabs, the Israelites, the East Indians, like those come out of the Shemitic line. Now, where we come from specifically as the Israelites, we come from Abraham, who was called a Hebrew, and then he had a son by the name of Isaac. He had a son by the name of Jacob, and that's where we come from, which is why we're called Israelites. When we call each other Israelites, we're really saying we come from Jacob, whose Jacob name was changed to Israel. So when you say Israelite, it's because you come from him. So that's how that gets broken down. So that's why I say.
Pardon the interruption. Some of this is new to me.
Okay.
When did Jacob's name get changed to Israel?
When he wrestled with the angel. Like Jacob's name was Jacob up until in the vision he was and he met an angel and he wanted a blessing. And so when he got the blessing, his name was changed to Israel, which just means Israel in Hebrew is Yasha Allah, which just means prince of the power. The Yah is Ayahi, the Shah means prince, the Allah is power. And you can find that in Genesis, the 32nd chapter and the 28th verse, when it says, and he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel, for as a prince hast thou power with the Most High and with men, and hast prevailed. So you might see the term Jacob, or you might see the term Israel, but they're talking about the same man as the progenitor of the Israelites. So that's where the term Israelites come from, because we come from Jacob.
All right. So would it be accurate to say that even before Jacob, the Israelites are descendants of Abraham, who is considered the progenitor of all these major Western religions? Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, he would be the progenitor, of course, because Ishmael comes from Abraham physically. Now, biblically, from a spiritual perspective, Abraham only had one son, which is Isaac. But we know physically he had other sons. Like, he had a total of 8 sons, Isaac, Ishmael, and then 6 other sons he had as well. I know commonly most people believe that Abraham only had 2 sons because Ishmael with Islam pushes that. And then, of course, Isaac, they push that. But he really had 8 physical sons. But the Lord only recognizes Isaac as his spiritual son because that's who he made the covenant with. So from your initial question, on the surface, yes. But when you go to the truth of the matter, Abraham only spiritually had one son, and that's why we don't really look at it as a religion per se. But for conversation purposes, we may use the term, but it's not necessarily a religion because you have to be from Israel in order to be an Israelite. That's where you would have to be from.
Well, see, here's my thing. Here's my thing with the whole thing. So you said that, Africans are part of a different fork than the Hebrews, but we both look the same. And biologically, when we take a DNA test, genotypically and phenotypically, we're the similar, relatively same compared to other races. So how do we square that circle?
Well, now this has nothing to do with features, so to speak, like looks. Like Africans have many different shades of brown. Black people have many different shades of brown. East Indians got different shades of brown. Arabs got different shades of brown. It's not necessarily a color thing. Like, even the color thing is really a battle that we've only had from slavery. Like, when the white man came, like, Africans and Israelites and Arabs, it was never a color issue. Our issue was more territorial, borders. I want to own this part of land, so I'm going to go to war to take this land. It wasn't, you dark person, I'm going to get you. It wasn't until the white man came and made everything a white or black thing that we really have these color things. So it has nothing to do with skin tone or anything like that. It has more so to do with your father, who your father is, where your nation comes from, et cetera, like that. Like, even from the biblical perspective, as far as the Exodus, the Egyptians they wanted to kill the firstborn males off, not because of their skin tone, but because they just wanted to have dominance, and they know the father carried. If they could destroy the men, they can destroy the race. So it's not a color barrier or anything like that. And even from a DNA perspective, I'm a little skeptic when it comes to that, only because DNA for heritage or for where you come from, it's just not been proven to be accurate enough for me to deal with that wholeheartedly. I know, like, for example, if we were to take a test for a child, so like if a child was born and we wanted to take a test, it's 99.9% accurate. But right now, for DNA, if you go to a bunch of different clinics, you'll get different answers, and it's just not accurate enough to for me to use that as a end all be all.
Okay, so what I can hear the audience saying to their radios or their computer screens is, you're telling me not to trust something that's 99.9% accurate, or whatever the accuracy is, something that's physical and tangible. You're telling me not to trust that, but to trust the words in a Bible that, many believe that this was written by an Albion. The King James version of the Bible and all these other versions of the Bible were compiled by Albions like Constantine, Clovis, King James, who was the king of Scotland before he ascended to the throne, by Mary, the Queen of Scots, and became the king of England, and didn't have any authority to even write a Bible. So, how do we make sense of that? How do we start accepting where you're coming from when, what I can see and what I can touch seems more valid to me?
Okay. So now we go with the DNA thing, and then I'll address the other side. There was these white girls. They were triplets. They had the same mother and father. They was identical twins in every single way. And they gave them a DNA test, and all three of them, they were not 100% within each other. They were like some were 60%, 70%. It was just different. So now that's triplets, same mother and same father. And when they did the DNA test for them, it just wasn't accurate. So when it becomes a little bit more accurate, then maybe it's more dependable. It's just not that accurate. And then while we say people should listen to us, and you brought up, you mentioned King James and Constantine and stuff like that, the historical records that's common about King James and Constantine is just not true. What I mean by that is when you go through the real history, you'll find out, well, the part that you said about him ruling over Scotland, that actually is true. But when you go through the history, King James didn't write the Bible first. He only commissioned to have it written to be given to the common people, because at one point it was only given to the upper class, which would then spoon feed it down. And King James himself was a brother. He wasn't a so-called white man, as they say.
How do we know that? How do we know that?
There's a good book you can get called A Negro Question, Volume 4. I recommend that book to get because it kind of has everything condensed into one. Because if I told you to go other places, you'd be all over the place. But if you get the Negro Question, Volume 1,
The
you can look
Negro
at
Question, Volume 1. I'm going to include a link in the show notes for the family. So wherever y'all are watching this, YouTube.
And I'll email it to you and to give you the exact one and make sure you got the right one. Because it's a couple of volumes to that book. And in that book, it'll give you the line of King James. And even one of his lines, they called the boy, they called him a Negro boy, one of the kings. I think it was Sir Charles. I'm in Massachusetts at a hotel would have had my books.
No doubt.
To give it to you, but that is an excellent book that will show you the pictures. It will show you everything. It'll give you the history. It's Volume 4, The Negro Question, Volume 4. I'll email you the link so you know exactly which one I'm talking about. And you'll see that he was a brother. He was not a so-called white man, as they say, which is what the Renaissance era was about. The Renaissance era was a time where they came and then they just whitewashed every single thing that you can imagine. So they whitewashed James, they whitewashed Jesus Christ, they whitewashed all of history, and not even just from a biblical perspective. When I brought up earlier, they even whitewashed Egypt. They whitewashed every single thing that you can imagine to make it seem like they were the only ones that were any good, so that black people wouldn't have no sense of pride in anything except trying to overcome slavery, which is impossible if you don't know your history. So when you go into the Bible, there's a chapter, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible. One of the main components that we use is Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, which talks about what would befall the children of Israel in the latter days. One of them being the slavery, the transatlantic slave trade, which is what we all know that we were a part of. So there's just things written in that Bible, which were written thousands of years ago, that came true today prophetically, that just makes it the identifying marker. Like what I do find about black people is that we have a definite want to know where we came from. Whether you agree with the Bible, whether you agree with Islam, whether you agree with Kemet, one thing we all know is that we want to know where we come from. And so far in my research and my searching, because what I've had to do having to deal with brothers from the conscious community like SETI or Polite or whoever it may have been, is I had to then go study.
We might have to do after hours on those. I mean, we got to do a sideshow with just Sarnetta, but go ahead.
Yeah, so but it did force me to study into Kemet, into Islam, into all these different walks of life. And what I find is that none of them can identify who we are today. From a history perspective, I mean, you can never deny what Egypt was able to do, Samaria was able to do, Nubia.
Right.
And so I would never say, like, I'm not one of those that say, well, they wasn't nothing, they were garbage, meaning like they didn't do nothing good at all. That's never been an argument of I.S.U.P.K. The only argument of I.S.U.P.K. is that we're just not those people. So they can do great things, But there's just nothing from those records that could say I'm those people. And in my interactions with who people say they're scholars, they don't never show me how we are those people. But I can go into, go ahead.
Typical arguments, because before we did this interview, I reached out to members of our organization. And I was like, hey, I'm bringing on Captain Tazariac. What questions do you all have for him? And I got flooded. But one of the ones that jumped out was, where is the Hebraic record, right? So Kemet, carved in stone, Nubia, carved in stone. All these great civilizations have their records carved in stone. And we can still see from pigment on parchments, papyri, and on those walls, the color of those people. And there are annotations made that differentiate the people of Kemet, Nubia, Sudan, all these different areas from other groups of people. But we don't see that with the Hebrews besides these Bibles. And of course, we know that there are something like 60,000 different versions of Christianity. And pause. So I understand that Hebrew Israelites don't necessarily consider themselves as Christians or people that strictly adhere to the principles of Jesus Christ. And of course, you all refer to Jesus as Yeshua. Is that accurate, or am I off the mark there? Well, of course, he's in the pantheon of prophets. Go ahead.
Right. Some people say Yeshua. Some people we say Yahushua. Some people say Yehoshua, but I understand exactly where you're coming from.
Yahushua being the Son of the Most High? Is that the translation?
Yes. Yeah, okay. That's the Son of the Most High.
All right, got it. All right, so a lot of questions wrapped up in there. Let me just parse it down to just one or two. Where's the Hebraic record outside of the Bible? We can pick up physical items, from the sands of Kemet and Sumeria and sub-Saharan Africa, but we can't pick anything up that says here are the Hebrews, right? No bodies, no temples, no nothing. So what do we have to go on with that?
Well, nobody wants to use the Bible as a primary source, which is essentially what's being said. And of course, like you said, there are different versions of the Bible written, which the Bible is just a translation of the Hebrew and the Greek of our records. So, for example, if you were to do the Dead Sea Scrolls, you would see that those Dead Sea Scrolls, which were written thousands of years ago, which would predate any translation of the Bible, you can use that as a source. A lot of people always talk about the Kemetic records and stuff like that, and I always use one example to show just because you can find something written down doesn't make it accurate. Queen Hatshepsut, and she was one of the pharaohs, and when she died, her predecessor, which I believe was her brother, I could be wrong if it was her brother, but I know it was someone in relation to her, changed her whole dynamic of her records and what she did, even though it's written on the walls. And you have to know the part of history to kind of find out the truth. So just because something is written on a wall doesn't make it any more true than what we say is written about the Bible. It can only be true.
But can't the same logic be turned on the Bible? Just because it's written in the Bible doesn't mean it's
That's why
true?
I said that. Right. That's why I said that. That's why I said saying that it's written on the wall doesn't make it any more valid than we saying that it's written in the Bible. I'm agreeing with you. I'm in agreement that it doesn't make it true. Right. My point in saying that is what makes the Bible true, again, it'll always go back to the prophetic natures that's written in the Bible. Like when it talks about the so-called white man, it doesn't call the white man white, just like it doesn't call us black. But it does give a certain character. It does give characteristics. It tells us that he dwelt in the mountains, which they said in the cleft of the rock. The white man calls himself Caucasians. So there's characteristics written in those records about a certain individual that would do certain things that can describe somebody today. That's the so-called white man. Even if it talks about the Arabs, there's characteristics that it writes about the Bible that describes him today. There's characteristics of us. There's prophetic natures of us that is written in the Bible that come true today.
Right.
There's if you go from a World War I, II, and III perspective, that's written in what we would call the book of Revelations. So it's not, I'm in total agreement that you can't just say because it's written in the Bible makes it true. What's written in the Bible has to actually have happened or about to happen or have to be some validity to it to make it be accurate. When it comes to bodies, I don't know if anybody wants to get into that too much because They haven't found everybody of every pharaoh or every Egyptian that they speak about, but they do find some. And that's easy because when you look at the pyramids or the origin of the pyramids would be what you would call funerals or funerary tombs, which I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way, but we know that the pyramids were erected for pharaohs to be buried in, and then they would kill their servants and everything would be buried with them because they cared more about the afterlife. So the afterlife was an important part to, and not to every Egyptian, because of course, if you go into bodies, we don't see the bodies of every Egyptian that lived in Egypt. We only find bodies or historical records of the pharaohs or the famous people of that time. So because they cared about the afterlife and what they felt happened to their body in the afterlife, it would be more plausible to find them. The latter thing I'll say, in 70 AD, when Israel got destroyed, everything was burned to the ground. All our gold was taken, all our records was taken. Everything about us, for the most part, was taken. So when
now,
you say,
are you referring to the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem?
Yes, I'm referring to the destruction in the temple of Jerusalem. Now, with that said, we do have bodies. Excuse me, I don't want to say bodies. You can find the tombs of some of our patriarchs. I won't say all of them, of course, but you can find the tombs of some of our patriarchs that have written out records, like Zacharias and et cetera, like that. I've shown that. It's just that people don't want to accept it. It's like, and of course, this has nothing to do with you, but the body question has been asked a few times. And then when I show some historical data pointing to tombs of our ancestors, then it gets disregarded. It's almost like people ask a question, and then when they get the answer to the question, which they should be satisfied in, because it can actually answer the question, they don't accept it.
And that's exactly why we do these podcasts and our courses. Right. So let's go ahead and admit that into the record in the court of the people versus the Hebraic traditions. So we do have bodies, we do have records,
right? And you do have records, not of everybody. I'm never going to say it's everybody, because again, we didn't care about the afterlife like that to have a special care. Like, y'all would bury them. No, I'm not saying y'all, of course, but the Egyptians, so to speak, would bury them in a certain way to preserve their bodies, as opposed to that wasn't important to us because we knew that when you died, you came back onto this plane. So we didn't worry about the flesh because the spirit wasn't there no more. The spirit would be born back into existence through what you would probably today call reincarnation. So because we knew that, we didn't have pyramids and stuff like that. So that wasn't a concern of ours.
Understood. So of course we don't have the bodies of all the patriarchs. I got another question.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
I have myriad questions, so maybe I should take a pilgrimage and sit at your feet for a while. But you keep mentioning patriarchs and the feet of the generals. You keep mentioning patriarchs. And earlier you made a statement about the lineage of a person being determined by their father. Well, in most African traditions, we follow a matrilineal lineage. We follow a matrilineal pattern. So you keep mentioning patriarchs. I haven't heard anything about the queens. When I see you all setting up camp and doing your thing, I don't see any queens out there. Now, of course, I've visited places and I've seen the queens there. My question is, what's the role of the black man juxtaposed with the role of the black woman, according to Hebraic tradition, and how you all do things with I.S.U.P.K? Because this is a major issue. I mean, you have the Me Too movement coming up. You have the battle of black feminism versus what they perceive to be the black hetero patriarchy, whatever the hell that is. What's I.S.U.P.K stance on that, and what's the Hebraic tradition say about the role of women with men?
Okay, what I'm going to first say from a biblical perspective, the Bible says in First Esdras, the 3rd chapter, the strongest thing outside of the Most High is a woman, for what she can do, what she can inspire. What men do for women is insane. So a woman plays a great role. Of course, from a patriarchal perspective, that patriarchal perspective is mainly to establish who you are as a nation. It's not to devalue a woman, because the black man and black woman is probably the most powerfulest thing that could ever exist on the planet. That's why we're both attacked. Black man is attacked first, black woman is attacked second. The black man being a protector, the black woman being the nurturer. That's the two roles that they play. Now, of course, on the street, from a biblical perspective, the men go out and battle. So when we go out on the streets and teach and stuff like that, you won't see the woman. But if you come into our school, you can see the woman doing great things for our school, establishing. I always glory in, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. That was established by a sister in our school. That was not established by a brother. She's a PhD doctor married to one of the generals in our school, and she was able to establish that. She was able to establish the GED program that we have. So our woman plays a great role in what we do. When you need nursing, our women can play a role in that. If there's advice that our women can give to the other sisters in our school, they can do that as well. It's just that because people more so see it like on a YouTube and it's more so in a battle type of format or teaching type of format to the masses, they don't see it. But make no mistake, the black woman plays just as much as important role in our plight or our salvation as the black man does. It's just a role thing for us. So you're not going to see me nursing. I can't nurse. I'm not a woman. That's a woman's job. You're not going to see me. If a woman,
hey man, let some of these Negroes tell it you can. Let some of these Negroes tell it, men are going to be having babies in a couple of years.
Right.
That's a whole different topic. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. But so like, even if, let's say, like the woman that did our 501c3, she's a PhD, are we not going to let her excel? No, we want black women to excel in everything that they do. The only thing that we don't want her to do is to turn on the black man in the process. We want her to understand that just as we have to uplift her, she has to be one that uplifts us as well. We go hand in hand. Like, we don't make a competition between black men. Like, patriarchal to us, when a woman comes into our school and she finds out that we patriarchal, she knows coming into our school, that doesn't make her less of a woman. That doesn't diminish her at all. Now, from the outside looking in, I can understand that because the black woman is God pumps through the entire earth. And when I see the black woman is God, I see a hustle. And again, this is no disrespect to anybody that doesn't use it in that term, but from everybody that I've seen say a black woman is God or pushes the black woman to the forefront, I see them hustling her. And I would rather just tell a black woman the truth and uplift her.
How so? Build on how you feel they're hustling. Are you talking in terms of polygamy? Are you talking in terms of usury? How do you mean you feel
I'm
like they're hustling?
talking in terms of gassing a woman up. Like, of course, we
okay, I got you. We're taking it to the streets. All right.
Yeah. Like, I'm gassing it up. Or if I was to take it from a biblical perspective, when in Genesis, the 3rd chapter, when the serpent came to the woman, which the serpent was a man, it's just like when we say serpent, it's no different than we call a white man a devil, or a white man a pig, or a snake today. It's just a metaphor for what they are spiritually. So the serpent was a man, and he told that woman, you will be a god. And when he told that woman she would be a god, she turned on her man. Like, she disobeyed what her man said, learned what the other man said, and then convinced her man to disobey what they were supposed to do as well. So when you tell a black woman she is God, that's enticing, it's inviting, because now she gets to be dominant when it ain't necessary for her to be dominant over everything. And then she ends up getting seduced. So that's the perspective. So you think about it today, the black woman, I did a lecture in March of this year called The Miseducation of the Black Woman. And I remember when I first did that lecture, boy, black women on the premise, they was mad at me initially because they didn't understand the perspective that I was coming from. And the perspective that I was coming from was the miseducation of the black woman is the black woman has been told that she got to be independent. If you go back to when Sybil did that song with Salt and Pepper, talk about I am independent.
That's right.
I don't need no money. Don't need no man at all. And what mind boggles me, and Shahrazad Ali is a woman that I admire. And what mind boggles me is I just don't know what a black woman had to be independent from. Like Shahrazad Ali made a statement. I'm gonna say it, and I'm saying her name because I don't want to take the credit for it. The black man has never even been given the opportunity to be in charge of the black woman to say whether he's failed or succeeded at all, because we've never been free. We've been fighting since we've been in America. So to even say that you got to be free from a black man makes no sense to me, because when have you actually been under his instruction without him having to battle the oppressor? Like, we're at war.
Right.
You understand? So like, and so when I actually did the lecture, and then I wanted to bring out the facts that before 1964, like the 60s and the beginning of the 70s was the turning point of the destruction of the black man and black woman.
That's right. We call that the Black Power era. That was the end of the Black Power era.
Yeah. And it was so much that was so heavy, because when you look at the statistics in the 60s, the black man and black woman being together was starting to become the most dominant thing in America, even over white families.
Right.
And when the black man and black woman was together, the household was intact. Economically, we were straight. Our children was being raised properly. And even though we was in hell, we was turning the corner. And then you had the drug epidemic come. Then you had the feminist movement come, which that Gloria Steinem, which she worked for the CIA, she went out and targeted black women and started teaching them to be separate from the black man, which to this day, I don't know why that would make sense, because the white woman don't want to be separate from the white man. Two things you can look at. More white women voted for Donald Trump than didn't, even though he said grab him by the vagina. I'm saying it the nice way.
Right.
Even though he said grab him by the vagina, more white women voted for Trump. They had that governor in Arkansas who got the child molestation charges, trying to rerun. Not governor, he might be a
you're talking about Senator Roy Moore, and it was the same thing. You know, we had very few, only 2% of black women voted for that man, but the majority of white women voted for that man. You're 100%
right. And you know why white women will vote for white men even though they come across as vulgar? Because white women know a white man is the one that's going to protect them from the enemy.
Thus they
That's
edify
what white women know. Thank you. Now, black women have to understand that they're going to be protected, they need the black man to protect them. So when we go out on them streets, we're not just fighting for black men. We're fighting for every black woman that's out there as well. And we're showing, and the reason why you don't see the black woman out there is because we're showing her, you don't have to do that part of the fight. Your fight is different. Your fight is getting these other women to stop aborting babies, getting these women to get off these stripper poles, nurturing these children. So these young girls that's coming up, they're not so quick to have sex, thinking that they got to have sex. These young boys, like there's a role that she's playing. So it may seem like we're on the front, on the forefront, but the black man and black woman in the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, we're on the front line together. It's just a role that, we're both playing. So the black woman is just as important as the black man in I.S.U.P.K. So just to set the record straight, there is no diminishing of her. If anything, she'll get more glorified in our school than she would ever get glorified anywhere else, because we don't have to tell her she's a god to seduce her, to make her feel good about herself. We just want to tell her the truth. You don't have to fight. We'll fight for you. You help raise these women. You help bring these children up. You go out there and do the best. And we don't stop them from getting no education, from getting any. Only type of job we probably would want them to be is like law enforcement, military, or anything like that.
That will put them in harm's way. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Anything that will put them in harm's way. But to be a doctor, to get a PhD, to teach and do great things, we would never hinder her from that.
I can tell we're gonna have a part 2, 3, and 4. I might even have to meet you on site.
I don't have a problem with it at all. I don't have a problem.
And I hope the family, I hope the family's enjoying the depth of the knowledge that you bring to the table. You actually have your own podcast, is that right? You do more than just a YouTube.
We're working on it. We have a radio show that we do every Thursday that's primarily on YouTube, the podcast will be up in about a week or so. So we do have a podcast coming for it.
Let us know. We'll link it up, and I'll make sure that the brothers and sisters know how to get in touch with you there. A couple of other questions.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think this is a criticism as much as it is a perception of some members of our community, and that is that the I.S.U.P.K, the Hebrews, the Black Israelites, that whole umbrella family can be seen as a little aggressive and divisive in the Black community. In other words, you know, the perception is floating around that y'all don't want to work with anybody unless we declare ourselves Hebrews. And until then, and until you accept the I.S.U.P.K ideology, y'all don't want to have nothing to do with any other member of the community. So my question to you is, what do the teachings of the Hebrews mean for Muslims, Kemetic scientists, Yoruba practitioners, atheists? What do y'all want to have happen with that relationship? Are y'all trying to convert everybody? Are you all willing to work with others? Are you willing to learn from others just as others learn from you? So set the record straight there.
What I'm gonna say, our end result, of course, is for everybody to be what they are, as far as being Israelites. So that is the ultimate goal. Now, does that mean that I'll never work with a Muslim or Kemetic scientist or Yoruba practitioner or even an atheist or Egyptologist? No, it does not. I will work with any Black person. And we have like Passovers, I get cookouts, et cetera, like that. And any Black person, I invite everybody. Like I go, like that's the only good thing I say. Like I didn't know who Polite was at all before I met her. I didn't even know who Sinetta, none of them was. I was just teaching on the street. I didn't even want to debate. A lot of people don't know. I didn't even want to debate Polite when he asked for it. I had told the school to let the brother that was in charge of the camp at the time. I had said he could do it, because everything was always just ranked, and I didn't even think it was that important, to be honest, because I didn't know life from a can of paint. He just came in front of the camp. I debated him on the street. After that was over, I was done with it. I just thought it was another day at the office, but they told me because I started it, I had to finish it, and then the rest just became history. But I like that they did that, because it put me into, like, I love Black people.
That's right.
I love them. I love from the homeless man to the wealthy man. I totally love Black people. And I know that just like I had a walk of life before I found that I was Israelite, I believed in something. And I can't reject Black people because they call themselves something else. Otherwise, I'm pretending to love them. Like the scriptures say, if you only love them that love you, you don't have no love at all. You have to love them regardless of what they are. And so if I'm trying to get my message to a Muslim and he says, well, can you come here? Am I going to say no? Because they might reject it. Now I could go there with him and then we could build together, and I'm listening to him, he listening to me, and I might gain him to my side. That's how I look at everything. So I've been to Kemetic events. I've been to Muslim events. I've been to everybody's events. I've been to a Dr. Umar Johnson's event. I've been to Sinetta's events. I went to an event Polite did. I went to a Muslim event when Poppy had that situation where he brought out how he was molested with by Bambaataa. I had a whole rally in New York. And Irritated Genie. And that's another thing. Me and Irritated Genie, who's a straight up Pan-Africanist brother.
Oh, I know him. He's been on the show. We've done a couple of shows with him, actually. And, he's my good brother. And, I don't align with him on everything, but, I'm not supposed to. But go ahead.
Now, me and that brother, me and him did a lecture together on child molestation. This was in July of 2016. Now, that's a brother that's a Pan-Africanist. I'm an Israelite. And we came together, did a joint venture to address child molestation that's plaguing Black people. So on the surface, it seems like, the Israelites, they won't deal with nobody, but that's just not true. I've always implored Black people that come from different walks of life, come and sit down with me. Let's do something together. Let's find a common ground first, and then we can work out our differences later. And so far, I've been saying this since 2013. Irritated Genie was the first brother that came and said, hey, Tazaryach, you against homosexuality, child molestation. You see the situation with Poppy and Bambaataa and Ron Savage and everything. Let's bring it to the forefront. And me and him did that rally together in New York, in Harlem, and then we did the lecture together. We did the rally, I think, in May or June, and we did the lecture together in July. And so when brothers and sisters want to know what has to happen to them, we still got to come together. Right? We have to come together. We have to battle the problems that are plaguing Black people.
That's right.
And in the middle of that, I'm going to drop that Israelite stuff on you. In the middle of that, they're going to drop that Yoruba stuff on me. And just like they're hoping to gain me to their side, I'm hoping to gain them to my side. In the middle of that, we're going to save so many Black people's lives from maybe drugs, from raping, from child molestation, from homosexuality, from lesbianism, from abortions. We're going to save them in that process. So it's almost like a sacrifice we have to make. So the sacrifice that I have to make is, as an Israelite, I want to win them over, but they're in the Islam. So am I going to not talk to them at all because they're in the Islam and I think Israelite is the way? No, I'm going to sacrifice talking about the Bible all the time so that I can win them over, because they're going to think I'm not talking about the Bible, but everything I'm talking going to be about the Bible. I'm just not going to say John such and such says this, Isaiah such and such says this. Like even in this conversation, everything that I'm saying is biblical. I'm just not using verses because I'm trying to gain people to understand exactly. And then they'll say, well, what made you switch sides? What made you do this? And I say, well, I found that I was Israelite and I followed this. And then that might win them over. No different than a brother that follows Kemetic. They come to me and I say, man, what made you say that? And he might win me over. But we cannot isolate Black people. We can't isolate them. So I'll never isolate Black people. So if anybody wants to know, we will work with any and everybody on the face of the planet, as long as they're not doing nothing so wicked that we just can't. Like, I'm not going to hook up with drug dealers, but I would meet with them to get them to stop. But there ain't going to be no coming together where I'm going to be supportive of them dealing drugs. But if I can talk to them and counsel them, I'm going to do that too. So I'm never going to be away. That's why we go into the ghettos of America. And that's why we're on them corners. We're on the same corners that the drug dealers is on. You know what I mean? And we telling them, you can't be a drug dealer. You can't be this. You can't be that.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. One of the tenets of our organization is, we can work with you as long as you're not harming our people. And so we align with you there. But this raises a different issue. Not necessarily a problem, but it raises a different issue. There are a lot of organizations out there that think they have the truth, a lot of spiritual systems that think they have the truth, right? So when you go into the Baptist church, the one and only authority in that church is the Baptist ideology. When you go into the mosque, the one and only ideology comes from the Quran, right? When you go into these different temples, that ideology claims to be the ideology that the Most High gave authority to. Why is yours considered that organization? Why is yours considered that theology that the Most High gave authority to, and how do you prove it?
Well, the latter part that you just said, I was going to say, like, first of all, anybody that says that they're the truth, you should be able to question everything about them. And what I mean by question them, you should be able to go into that organization and ask them every question, and they should be able to answer the questions. Anytime you go into some, like a church or a mosque or our organization, you start asking questions and they start making it seem like you can't, then you should run from them. So I think in the beginning, you kind of asked a similar question, and the scriptures say it's two scriptures. One scripture says you shall know them by their fruit and what they're able to produce, and then see if that's true. So if you take that Christian church, a homosexual, a drug dealer, a whore, woman committing abortions, adultery, alcoholic, drug dealer, they're able to go into that church and they're able to remain being exactly what they was before they walked in there. When you come into our organization, you can't, because we're about the truth. The truth doesn't compromise. The truth is not hypocritical. So we have to follow what that book says. That's what separates us. It's not the name I.S.U.P.K. Again, it's not Commander Jenny Hanna. It's not Tazaryach. It's not whoever it is that you want to name. It's the words. It's are the words in those books. Is the laws and guidelines in those books being followed in that organization? And if they're truly being followed in that organization, then that organization is the truth. So that's what we base it off of. The second part of the scripture I was going to mention is in Acts, the 4th chapter. It says, if it be of men, I'll get the exact verse for you. It might be the 5th chapter. But in the book of Acts, there were a lot of people claiming that they had the truth and they had this and they had that. And one of the men said, leave them men alone, because if it be of the Lord, it'll come to nothing. But if it be of the Lord, it'll stand. If it's not of the Lord, it'll fall. It'll get destroyed. And even though you see a Christian church on every corner, no one believes that that Christian church is teaching the truth. No one. I have yet to meet anybody that goes to the Christian church to learn the truth. You go to the Christian church because it gives you a sense of cleanness, even though everybody in there is dirty. Eddie Long is a good example. Eddie Long is a good example. He's a man that paraded himself on being against homosexuality, only to find out he was a homosexual himself.
He racked up higher numbers than Sandusky, according to some accounts.
Yeah.
To demonize Sandusky and edify Eddie Long.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you know who defended him? And this may ruffle some feathers. Farrakhan defended Eddie Long. Farrakhan said that Eddie Long, he said even if Eddie Long did it, they were consenting adults. You cannot be a consenting adult in homosexuality.
And you can't be a consenting adult when you're encountering a person of power and authority who's using that influence over you. But that's a whole different conversation. Just the fact that it was a homosexuality period is an issue. And that makes me kind of wonder whether or not. And the thing about it is, I've reached out to all these different religious organizations, right? Mm-hmm. I reach out to everyone. Right. If you're in the Black community and I believe that your intentions might align with us, then you have our platform for however long you wanted or needed. And I've reached out to them, hadn't gotten any responses. Maybe it's because of the type of organization that is. But, you know, just to discuss ideology, maybe I need to reach back out again and talk about what their stance is on homosexuality, which I'm not familiar with, so I'm not going to speak on. But, yeah, that's a little distressing. That's a little distressing.
Yeah, it is. And it was another thing he said, and I'm bringing this up to just bring the Islam perspective. Another thing he said was, I did a lecture I called the lecture No Homo. And it was, of course, being against homosexuality. And Farrakhan said something in that interview that was very disheartening to me. And what he said was, he started talking about Tyler Perry. And we know Tyler Perry is a cross-dressing homosexual.
Absolutely.
And he said he don't look at Tyler Perry as a man dressing as a woman. He said he looks at Tyler Perry as bringing to the forefront the most quintessential and important person in our sojourn in America, which is the Black woman. And on the surface, first of all, on the surface, it sounds terrible because he's talking about, because what he's basically saying is that only a man can be a woman. And then when you think about the woman that Tyler Perry is portraying, Medea is a drug addict, loudmouth. She was on the Maury Povich show, found out the man that she said was her child's father is not her child's father. And he's saying that that's the most important person. That's bringing to the forefront the most important person in our sojourn in America. So when we say we're the truth, we would never condone those type of actions.
And it makes you wonder what's going on at those levels as well. You know, who is Farrakhan talking to? And, you know, I remember he had a foray into Scientology. I don't know that there was any closure on that discussion, but it kind of makes you wonder why all the deviation from the original intent. And, of course, we know the original intent had nothing to do with Scientology, partnering up with all these different groups, I believe they're supporters of Israel as well, which just for the record, that is not our platform. Well, let me ask you this. What is your perspective on the state of Israel, the Palestinian conflict, and how does Israel relate to the Black Hebrews? I know that Ben Ami led a group into Israel in, I believe, the 60s or 70s. You mentioned the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is back in the news. Donald Trump basically recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and taking it away from the indigenous Palestinians. So what is I.S.U.P.K and your own personal perspective on what's going on in the Middle East?
Okay, I actually went to Israel this past October. So I actually visited Dimona. Dimona is where Ben Ami and them ended up at.
Right.
And
where they're still at.
It was in the right where they're still at. Right. I actually visited and met with the elders over there. I would recommend for anybody, any Black person, to actually at least visit the land at least one time, because for me, the experience was great. I mean, it was great on the bad side and the good side. It was great on the good side to go visit my homeland. It was great on the bad side to see why we pray for the death of our enemies every day. Like in our school, we pray for the death of the so-called white man every day. And if you see how they're running every piece of land, you would understand why. What Trump is doing, that's prophetic. Because number one, that land, I remember the Iranian president, when 1948, when they put them white bastards in that land, the Iranian president said the Jews left black and they came back white, because everybody knew that these were not the people of the land.
And for the audience listening, right? Just to build for the audience listening, because you're throwing out a lot of knowledge. I think brothers and sisters, they'll have to pause this every 5 minutes and go and take notes and do a week's worth of research.
Right.
But in 1948, what basically happened was the United Nations, and back then it was called something else. They gave parts of Palestine as it existed over to Israel. Right. Now, the Palestinians had no say in this process. And in fact, they were a suzerain to Great Britain, which means they were basically under British control. They were a British protectorate. Same thing that happened on the African continent. So 1948, United Nations just basically gave this land over to the Israeli organization that was there at the time and said, okay, well, you have X number of square miles. And that's where the state of Israel came into being. Immediately, there was a civil war. The Palestinians rose up along with the rest of what was then called the Arab League to try and get these perceived invaders up out of there, because they didn't know who these people were. They had no say in the process either, because just like Palestine, they were considered a British or a European protectorate. The Arab League was actually founded by Europeans to control the Middle East, and they understood, amongst other things, that oil was the future and that they had to subjugate these people in the Middle East. So what we're talking about in 1948 actually started in 1915, 16, somewhere around there during the middle of World War I. And now we're seeing it all come into fruition today. And you mentioned that's prophetic, but go ahead. You said 1940. I think the last thing you said was 1948.
Yeah, I got the quote. Yeah, it was 1948. Abdel Gamal Nasser, president of the United Arab Republic, said that you left black and you returned white, speaking about the Ashkenazis or the so-called Jew that lives there today. And so, they've been at war since that time. Like, a lot of people be having all this remorse for the white man over there in Israel. But if you take a land, now, I ain't got much love for the Palestinians either.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Right. But for edification or historical perspective, at the time that they put them Jewish people in there, Palestine was all of that. Like, Palestinians had took over all that. So now you divide that in half and you just stick them in there and just say they're the Israelites. And they're not. And so they've been at war. So the president, since about the 80s, has been postponing where they're going to make the state. Are they going to give the Palestinians the right to Jerusalem as a state? Or are they going to give the Israelis the right to Jerusalem as a state? So since the 80s, they've been postponing it. So what Trump is doing is ushering in what we would call the Third World War. Because now that he's allowing the Israelis to make Jerusalem a state, the Palestinians are not slaves. Like, they're not us. Like, they're not black people where they're just going to take whatever the white man gives them. They're now going to fight and fight and fight. That's why you're seeing so many riots across the earth for Arabs, because they don't like what Trump did.
That's right.
And what Trump is doing, from a UPK perspective, Trump is the perfect type of president, because he's I used to call him the Negro wake up call. But he's like the earth wake up call.
You know, and I'll take that versus the Negro somnambulist, the person that comes in and lulls everyone to sleep. There was a lot of praise heaped on Barack Obama, and if you juxtapose the two, then you know I'll heap some praise on Barack Obama, because this nightmare that we have in office is the devil on 2 feet, manifesting incarnate.
Right.
But the beautiful thing about that is, like you said, he's woken up a lot of brothers and sisters, and I think your organization, my organization, other movements, we've seen a lot of growth, and we can thank Trump for that.
Yeah, because what black people is now seeing is we got a bigger enemy than Kemet versus Israel. That's what we should see. Like, we should see that we have a way bigger enemy than what we think. Like, my enemy is not a brother that got an unk on his neck. Now, he's my enemy maybe after we get rid of the bigger enemy, but he's not the enemy that I really got to fight every day. And I'll prove my point when I say that. I was at an event this past August, and for those, of course, that know me know that I battle brothers in the Kemetic world. But anybody that noticed in the past couple of months, I have not battled nobody in the Kemetic world. And that was because there was an elder brother. He makes the jury for a lot of the brothers in Kemet. And I can't recall his name right now. I feel bad about that. But when I was at the event, he called me up there, and he actually made probably the best chain I've ever had. It has the Star of David. We call it a shield. But so people can understand, it has a Star of David as a symbol of life in there. And he gave that to me. And prior to him giving that to me, I was telling my brothers, I said, you know, I've battled Kemet to no end. I think I want to move past it. I said, because I don't see it really going nowhere other than people trying to hustle. Like, I recognize the hustle as well. So I don't know if people are sincerely trying to just debate, or if they just look at it like people like to see Israel fight Kemet. Right, exactly. People like to see Israel versus Kemet all damn day. And so it gets tiresome at some point, especially when they ask the same, like they be asking me to ask them questions, and I don't have no more questions really to ask Kemet. And then when they ask me questions, it's the same thing. They want to talk about the flood. They want to talk about this. They want to talk about that. They want to talk about the same things that I've been talking about since 2013.
Right.
So I said at that debate, I said at that lecture that they had that I wasn't going to debate nobody else in Kemet no more. I said, because I think I've moved past that. I said, I think we need to move on. Yeah,
it's a hustle, and it's disappointing because no disrespect for speaking over you, but I lose my thoughts quickly, so I got to put it out there.
No. You the host. You the host. Go ahead, get down.
You know, my only criticism of Sodnetter TV is it's such a powerful and far-reaching platform that you can do so much more with it than jockey for YouTube ratings by having these same phony debates on. The audience knows it. Those of us who are in the community, we know what's going on there. You can go deeper into that knowledge and reward the people with even more knowledge, right? As long as it's accurate, of course, instead of peddling around people who you know are inaccurate, but they make for a good screen presence and throwing out these bait questions that don't help anybody sort out what's what. So that's my only criticism of the whole, what'd you say? The conscious hustle is what it's become. It's like you got all these people peddling books, pamphlets. Polite says he's written 90 books. I'll leave it at that. You know, you got all these people peddling different things.
Polite probably the biggest hustler on the damn planet.
Broke my heart because he was a compatriot. You know, we came up in the same circles, and to see the turn that you're making now, it's doing a disservice to your community, because there are a lot of people who follow you, and they'll follow you right off that cliff.
Right. And that was, if I could, that was one of the reasons I stopped, because whether I wanted to be or not, I'm looked at as some sort of leader in both the Israelite community, conscious community, Kemetic, whatever you want to call it.
Definitely.
And just like you said, people are going to listen and follow you. People are going to listen and follow me. So if black people really got compassion for black people, and you realize you have a voice and you can say things that are different, you should start saying things and doing things that are different. Technically, I've only had one actual debate of going into an arena. That was the first debate that I had with Polite. Now, of course, when I'm at camp, people come in front of me and camp and ask questions. And I'm always going to do that because I don't know what they're going to ask me on the street. So I always deal from a street perspective.
Right.
I've done 6 lectures. I've done lecture on integration. I've done 3 lectures on child molestation or homosexuality. I've done lectures on miseducation of the Black woman. And I got another lecture coming up called the re-education of the Black man. My heart's desire is only for that type of stuff. The battle stuff is cool, and people say I'm good at it and stuff like that. I mean, it ain't nothing but talking shit. Excuse my language.
That's
you know, who can out slick talk the other, and I just happen to be a little bit better at it than the people that they brought forth.
It's like them ciphers. It's like them ciphers.
Right.
You know, everybody wants the conscious version of Black Thought, but you know, at the end of the day, it's entertainment.
Power, but the real power that we're supposed to have is truly uplifting Black people. That's where we got to go. So I told them at that debate, I told them at that lecture when they gave me that chain, because it was already on my spirit not to do it no more. I said, I'm not debating Kemet no more. I said, if y'all come up on me in the street, that's different. But as far as going into it, you know, if they walk up on me on the street, if I'm teaching and they say, man, forget you Israelites and Kemet is, you know, it might get a different person. But as far as setting up, organizing, and speaking, I'm not doing the Kemet thing no more. Now, as far as a Christian pastor or Muslim or something like that, I'm not. I haven't closed the door on dealing with that. More so Christianity than anything else, because Christianity is like worse than crack, because a crack addict know what they're doing is wrong. Christians, number one, not only do they not know what they're doing they don't feel what they're doing is wrong. They look at everybody else like they're the scum of the earth and they're the best. Whereas there's 2 types of Christians. There's a white Christian and a Black Christian. The Black Christian was praying for Dylan Storm after he shot them Black people in the church. How
soon we forget.
White Christians will kill everything smoking in the name of Christianity, not just for vengeance, but for enslaving and everything. So Christians, that's like the number 1 problem we got for Black people is Christianity. Christianity is worse than anything out there, because Christianity is what we battle. Every time we see Black people got to come together, there's the Christian that comes out to say, what about white people? You understand? Whereas the only way we can come together is if we remove ourselves from white people. If we just remove, and when I'm saying remove ourselves from white people, again, a lot of people think that means, well, you got to have a job, you got to have this. The white man that hates Black people works with Black people every day. The boss that you got at your job, your supervisor, your friend that you think is so cool because y'all can have a good conversation at the job that's white, they hate you. All you are is just somebody that they just got to work with their 9 to 5. Their loyalty is to their people. We have to learn to be the same way. What you do for your economic growth is not loyalty. It's just a job. What you do, that's why sometimes you might hear us use the term slavery. Like, I look at what I do economically as a slavery. I'm forced to do that.
That's right.
I look at what I do for the people as my job. That's why I love to do this. I love to go out, wake up Black people, travel here. Like, we always traveling up and down the globe, going here, going there. Even Israel, I did that, which I credit my wife to, because she came up. Her father used to run with Ben Amin and them, and he ended up leaving because of the worshiping that they did of him. But she's the one that put the bug in my ear to go. And when I went, it was a beautiful experience. Even that was work for me, but I love doing that. Anything that will uplift Black people, I'm all for it. So
true indeed. Got a lot of questions we didn't get to. We're gonna have to have you on again, or maybe we'll just string up a bunch of your podcasts and YouTube videos so brothers and sisters can get a 360. But you know, let's go ahead and start wrapping this up, because I've already taken up a lot of your time. So
no problem. Based
on your observations, what is the one thing that the Black community gets wrong about the Black Hebrews and I.S.U.P.K?
The one thing that they get wrong is that we're a hate group, and that we won't work with one of the questions you asked earlier, that we won't work with other Black organizations or Black people. The hate group part, and again, this ain't just for your audience. This is from a global perspective, because a lot of people say, oh, y'all teach hate, y'all teach hate, y'all teach hate. And the question I usually ask them is I say, well, who are we teaching that we hate? And because when I think about who we love, I start thinking about all the millions of Black people that are across the globe that require our love and need our love. And then I ask them who we hate. And then they say the white man. And I say, well, let me ask you something. What has the white man ever done that deserves our love? And I never get a direct answer for that, because I still to this day do not know what the white man has done that has ever required our love. There ain't not one point in our history in America where you can think of a time frame where the white man did something where we can say, okay, yeah, he was right for that. He did something for us. And I don't mean everybody. Like, somebody might say, well, they gave you welfare. There's more white people on welfare than Black people, so you can't say that. He gave Obama gave us health care. Health care was not something specifically for Black people. The white man showed his love for the Jewish man. When World War II was over, we was just talking about it. When World War II was over, he didn't want them to be amongst the other white people, the Germans, because they was oppressed. So he loved his people so much, they divided Palestine in half to give them a sense of freedom, because they would feel oppressed.
And furthermore, supported them with $2 billion as a jump start to buy weapons. Yeah, that's right, exactly. to quote unquote defend themselves.
And they still defend the Jewish man in any endeavor that he goes against. So now they say they so-called freed the slaves. Since we've been so-called free, they still kill us. They still lynch us. That 13th Amendment allowed them to imprison us, so that even though we wasn't a slave, we were still brought in there. And when we got ourselves together and established our own Black cities, not just Black Wall Street, you had Rosewood, you had cities in Chicago, you had cities in D.C. What the white man did was destroyed it. When we established our Negro League, which we was just talking about it, the white man destroyed it. When you take that sellout, Martin Luther King, I look at it as a sellout. Anybody that would serve us up to the white man is a sellout. But even if you look at Martin Luther King, who went to the white man with non-violence, even his reward was death. So here it is, you had a man that led a whole movement where he's telling the white man, we ain't gonna hit you, we ain't gonna harm you, we ain't gonna fight you, we ain't gonna do nothing to you.
Hands up, don't shoot.
Reward, the perfect example. He's the first hands up, don't shoot. His reward was death. But when I say I hate the white man, not because he's white, because I ain't scared of the color white. The color white ain't never did nothing to me. I only say white man because that's what he calls himself. Because we say we hate the white man for what he's done to us, we're looked at as a hate group. That's one of the most things that they get wrong at us. But everybody hated Osama bin Laden when them towers fell, and nobody cared. Nobody cared that when them towers fell, you can't even prove that Osama even did it. But when them towers fell, nobody gave Bush a problem going to kill men, women, and children that had nothing to do or any affiliation with Osama.
Right.
Had nothing. But they had no problem killing all of them because Osama dropped them towers. But when we say that we hate what the white man has done to us, we get that wrong. And then the other thing was thinking that we won't work with nobody. Any Black organization out there that wants to get together with me or the Israelite School U.P.K, all you got to do is just contact us. And again, as long as there's nothing that totally compromises what we do, we have no problem working with them. Again, Irritated Genie, you can ask him. Me and his interactions was perfect together when we did that lecture and came together against homosexuality and child molestation. So those are some of the things that they get wrong about us. And if I can add one more, that we hate Black women. And I think my answer to you earlier about how we feel about Black women should clear that up. But we do not hate Black women. We love Black women. Some of our brothers, including myself, have multiple wives.
That's right.
So there's no way I could hate Black women and I got wives, plural, and they all Black.
That's right.
Those are probably the three most important things, that we're a hate group, that we won't work with organizations, and that we hate Black women. We don't hate Black women. Now, I do hate the Black women that puts brothers on child support, call the police on them, aborting babies. And I love them, but I hate what they're doing. That's where a lot of the confusion, because they would hear us talking about the actions of the Black woman or the actions of the Black man and automatically assume we must hate the woman. It ain't the woman that we hate. It's the actions. What you said was probably the best way for people to understand it.
True indeed. True indeed. We can go on for another 2 or 3 hours, but
listen, if you want a part 2, you just hit me up. We can coordinate another date, and we could definitely do it again. That's not a problem.
True indeed. Speaking of, how do the brothers and sisters get in touch with I.S.U.P.K, yourself, and what can we do to learn more about what you're doing, support you? I know you all are about to open up the school in Harlem, which blew me away.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how that's going on too, and then just follow up with how we can support and get in touch and learn more.
Okay, well, the school in Harlem has been open since August 22nd of this year. We have classes at the school Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. The address is 2279 3rd Avenue. It's on the east side of Harlem. It's right on the corner of 124th and 3rd Ave. That school has been open. We're finished the renovation. Like, we kept it open while we was renovating so that people could see the work in progress. And it's pretty much done. And we just putting up some artwork in the building. But for the most part, everything is done. And that's been a battle within itself, because every time we would get close, when they found out we them Israelites, they be like, nah, it ain't for sale. We ain't renting, somebody done bought it.
You see what I'm saying?
So
or they'll change the laws on you. I saw that they tried to pass some noise ordinances to shut you all down. So
yeah, man, they did a whole lot. And so it was like a 2 to 3 year battle just to even get in there. And we didn't want to compromise our name, credo, or anything. We wanted to be able to walk in there and be able to teach what we wanted to teach. So we had to wait about 2 3 years, but we was finally able to get it up in Harlem. And even that's open. So, like, let's say someone from a different organization, whether Muslim, Kemetic, or whatever, but they want to do something at our school, just call me. My telephone number is 646-481-6315. Any brother that wants to come and do something together, we could do like a food drive program together. We could do, some type of charity type of event together. Anything. You just give me a call. We could use our school as the backdrop, and you can come to our school and we could work together and we could do something. That's the whole purpose of us getting to school. It's for the community. Like, we're a community-based organization. So anybody within the community can contact us. If you want to support us, we have a website, ISUPK.com. There's a tithes and donations link where you can support us financially. If you choose to support us financially, for those in the Israelite world, tithes is a commandment. If you're not in the Israelite world and you just want to donate to our cause to help us, then you can help us, because the funds, like, we all work, like I work, like I'm out at work right now. So the money does not come into my pocket. The lectures that I do does not come to my pocket. It goes to feed the people. Some people may not be able to pay their rent, may not be able to pay a bill or something like that. So what we do is we take those funds and give it to the people. Like, we give away so much money, it's ridiculous. So those are the best ways to get in touch with us, ISUPK.com, my telephone number, or let's say if you're not in the New York area, if you're in another area, when you go to ISUPK.com, there's a contact us page, and we have cities all throughout America. We got cities in the UK. We got places in South America. Working on Israel. So you can just contact the number closest to you, and, we'll work with anybody. So that's the best way to get in touch with us.
We on it. And we'll definitely be reaching out for some coalition work. I want to salute I.S.U.P.K, the generals, you, Captain Tazariac, for taking time to bring light to the family. Definitely enjoyed this interview, and I'm really looking forward to hearing a lot more from your squad. To be honest with you, in full disclosure, I've taught about the Hebrew Israelites in the past, but whatever teachings that I gave the rest of the family were definitely inadequate. My thing is, you got to go to the source. All right. You
Right.
can't go according to hearsay. Whatever your perceptions you all have from watching these chopped up YouTube videos or what you see as you just walk by are inadequate. You've got to go straight to the source, hear from the brothers and sisters who are actually involved in doing the work associated with the movement that you're interested in or that you're observing.
Absolutely.
So you've definitely brought
Absolutely.
some light in just one conversation. I'm looking forward to many more.
Oh, definitely. Whenever you want to hook up, like I said, just hit me up. You have my email, you got my phone number. I'm more than willing to come back on your show. So just hit me up. I'm fine with it. I appreciate you having me. It was definitely a blessing to be on your show.
No doubt. Family, that is a wrap. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode. And if you want more podcasts like this or free resources that we provide as a community service, make sure you join our email list. Go to panafricanalliance.com/subscribe. And if you're ready to take it to the next level with Black Business Builder tools to launch and build your website and your side hustle online, more than 900,000 premium WordPress themes, instrumentals, high quality video effects and intros. If you want access to the 5 Elements Mastery course, the Keys to Black Consciousness course, secret podcasts, PDFs, and an opportunity to connect with a much larger community, then go to panafricanalliance.com/VIP and see what we have to offer. Become a paid member. We absolutely need your support. In the meantime, remember our Pan-African Code of Conduct to do no harm to your own people. Help your people when they are in their time of need. And above all else, hold the line, hold the line. As Khalid Abdul Muhammad always said, hold the damn line. And I will build with you all next time. Habibi Fahodie.